And it's funny too, like Agent Orange, with all that said, like they're this real well-respected band and a band that a lot of modern bands have cited as a big influence. But like there's not a lot that at least I know about them. You know what I mean? Like I don't have like a ton of knowledge on like where
I
they
know very little about them.
so I don't really know why they didn't release that many albums like throughout their career, but have stayed so active.
What's up, everybody? How you doing? Welcome back to the show. My name is Randall. That's Rob. This is the Punk Rock Review. We're hanging out, man. It's a good time. We're talking about 4 punk rock albums, and you very well might see these in like smaller bit videos as I typically upload the long form, and then I chop it up into smaller, more digestible videos for the audience. But some people just really like the long form stuff, so I tend to just keep bringing it. But it's easier to put things on Patreon ad free if they're smaller, because Patreon has been getting weird about uploading giant videos. They're like, yeah, it just consistently causes problems, bro. So I learned, oh well, there's multiple reasons to chop these up now, so that's what I do. And I like the smaller stuff. I say smaller, they're still like 20 minutes a piece. You know, they're not like they're 5 minutes.
We don't really generate like those real digestible clips, even when we try to do so. Like they're
right. They're still like 15, 20 minute, 30-minute videos every time, because we like to yap, dude. Mm-hmm. This is our hobby, man. We do this shit.
If you're on a podcast and you don't like to talk, that's a real tough place to be.
That's a weird career path, or hobby, whatever one you've chosen. If it's your hobby or your career, it's a very strange thing to be spending your time doing.
I want you to throw to me and me to just be like, and then you.
So my buddy Clay on the other channel, on my other buddy's channel, actually, I started doing the horror movie channel again, but it's much more just as I have time to do it. But my buddy Clay that does the podcast, when we first started doing it, Chris too, man. Two of the guys were both like really quiet, and I had to like basically just yap them into getting out of their shell a little bit. But yeah, we got on the menu for tonight, we've got Agent Orange, the ATARIS, Murder City Devils, and Dead to Me. Like, I think we got a pretty wide array of sounds going on here.
We have no theme tonight.
Yeah, the theme is, do we like to listen to music? Cool. Yeah, me too. That's our theme.
Basically, yeah.
The next episode's going to have a theme. It'll be 25-year anniversaries. But this episode. And here's the thing. I had zero experience with Agent Orange or ATARIS, and we'll get into both of those reasons to why, because they're very different reasons, in just a minute. And we're gonna talk about, I think, Agent Orange first, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so give us a second. We'll get into that. Before we get started, I do want to say thank you to my Patreon members. I was able to pick up a new vlogging camera that is going to probably take the place of a lot of my gear. It's going to make my traveling easier and more affordable, because if I don't have to have checked bags, that saves me $75 a trip or more. That's not going to take very long before this is just paid for in checked bags. Yeah, so my Patreon members, they're the reason I have this. And so I've already said this in the other episode with Nitty, but I'm repeating it because I don't know who's going to watch which one. But I have a bullshit detector record. There was only 3 of them made. I don't know if you can see that, but it's number 3 of 3. It is basically a tie-dyed version. It's got red with a whole bunch of purple in it. They wasn't supposed to be made, but it does exist. So I'm going to give that record away on Patreon as a thank you, because I think that record is probably already going to command $50-$60 price tag. So I just thought it'd be nice to give it to somebody that helped me get something that I really want. So anyways, thank you so much. If you're interested in Patreon, there's a link in the description. We do ad-free stuff. There's an exclusive Discord, which is really important. And then just say so in the content if you so choose to do that. So yeah, let's talk about some punk bands, dude.
All right.
I should have looked this up before we started talking, but I didn't consider it. The album is called Living in Darkness by Agent Orange, right?
Yep.
So when did this record come out?
November of 81.
81. Bro, that's crazy. So my limited experience with Agent Orange is for a very silly and specific reason. When I was in a band called Crow's Feet, we got asked to open a show for Agent Orange. And we went to this club in Houston, and it was a nice place. And we had a lot of friends back then. So when we played, people showed up. And I assume that's why we were asked to open for them. I think we were either the second or third band. We weren't the first band. We were like the second or third. It might have been 2 out of 3 bands total, or 3 out of 4 bands. I think we were right before Agent Orange. And not that it's just a punk show, but there was quite a few people there. But I don't remember exactly what happened, but there was some kind of situation with our band and Agent Orange, and they were running their mouths a lot. And so on stage, I ran my mouth a bunch, and then they basically got booed and pelted with shit. And then the crowd left when we left. And so I never really listened to Agent Orange. That was a long time ago, and I don't remember what the deal was. I'm gonna accept responsibility for whatever happened. I'm assuming that it was something I did or said. But I remember that being a thing, and the promoter being like, "Bro, what is your problem?" And I was like, "I don't like people talking shit, man." I've always been kind of a little turd, I guess. But like, you know, I say all that to say that I kind of wish I had spent time listening to this band, man. I did enjoy the album. I'll get into why and all the song stuff here in a little bit, but I enjoyed this record, man. In 1981, that's a little earlier than I expected, but you can hear a lot of some of the things we've been talking about in the recent videos in this album. You or we or whatever, there has been picked a lot of records from like Orange County.
I've been narrowing in that on my picks. I've been having one punk classic in every one, and when I say punk classic, obviously like all the punk from the 70s and 80s is classic, but me in particular, I'm partial to that California stuff, the stuff that really influenced skate punk. I kind of dig all of that stuff, so I've been kind of wanting to just focus for our episodes on them. So yeah, I've been kind of bringing that theme. That's the one theme I've been kind of bringing.
Yeah, there's a thread that goes through like 3 or 4 of your past recommendations that I mean, I appreciate it. I think it's cool. It's stuff I didn't have a lot of experience with. Bro, I mean, even with the TSO, was that you that picked that, or was that Nitty?
No.
That was my buddy Kevin asked me to pick 4. He picked 4 albums and asked me to do it. I don't know if he thought I was actually going to do it, but I did. And Nitty and I covered TSOL, and there's a lot of overlap with that TSOL record and this Agent Orange record. Now, they're not the same, but bro, I tell you can tell that those guys were from the same part of the country.
Something we're going to talk about another band later in the episode. Keep that TSOL thought in there, because there's another band that'll like them. Yeah,
I have a feeling I know where you're going with that. Okay, so 1981, bro, you caught me off guard with the 81 thing, dude. Shit, that's crazy.
Yeah, no, this is formative punk.
And that's their debut record, no?
Yeah, and so 100% this video gets back to them, right? And your intro and all of that, like that's definitely gonna happen.
Oh Jesus! So I'm gonna have
to, because they're still active.
Oh word. Well,
so they only released like 3 albums in their main run, but they've stayed like touring and stuff. Like, and obviously, like as you can attest to, they've stayed an active band for a while.
Well, now I feel like a complete dickhead because I genuinely don't really remember what happened that night. But I remember it was for a long while I was real burned up about Agent Orange. I believe it was because somebody said that they were in the back of the room shitting on my band when I was playing, and that's what started it. I didn't want to say that earlier, but if they're active still and they're going to see this, I don't really think that I started any shit, because back then I would have been pretty excited to play with Agent Orange. But as I was young, this is probably before I was 25, early 20s. I was young, dude. I was a young, dumb fucking punk rock kid. But like, man, I need to get a hold of some of my old band members and ask them if they can remember, but I don't know that they're going to remember.
I hope I didn't further cause drama by stating that now.
No. I don't know, dude. What do I care, man? If somebody from the band sees this and for some strange reason they remember a show in Houston in 2006 or something, by all means, hit me up, dude. I would rather just talk to the band at this point because, well, I'm 44 in a couple of weeks, so I'm not a dumb kid anymore. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I mean, at least I said I liked the album, right? If I was like, and this shit was terrible, they'd be like, this guy's still a prick. Like,
so some jerk's gonna take you saying that and put it in front of there, and oh man,
dude, that honestly, I wouldn't even care. It'd be hilarious. Dude, punk rock's punk rock, dude. If somebody got upset by me saying that, then I can't imagine that Agent Orange doesn't have a thick skin. I mean, they're a punk band; they'd have to, right?
Well, and again, look at how we just said about the time they've been active. They've been through some, they've been active since like the late 70s. Like that's how old they've actually been kind of together and doing their thing. So they've been through every era of touring, kind of big and small. And they're in this kind of collection of bands and albums, like in that thing that I'm getting at. Like none of it's really that underground, even though these are not necessarily like the big classic rock records. They're sort of like it's sort of accepted as like the big punk records, and I think this is one of them in that like 80s, that early 80s kind of soup of before everything turns to new wave. There's these like really influential things. There's a lot of stuff
Right.
we've been talking about. There's Black Flag, there's TSOL. All that stuff is the Descendants. All that's bubbling, and then the new wave happens. It all goes down, and then Bad Religion sort of reemerges with Suffering. We've talked about that a million times, and I think where this band comes in is there's two categories, or there's two genres that this band gets stuck with. They get called by some people skate punk, which I understand where people are coming from there, but it's more, to me, that's more like they influenced all the skate punk bands. The thing
Right.
that
I
they
agree
get
with
called,
that.
that I think is more accurate, is surf punk, and it's because they are more of a connection to like a Beach Boys and stuff like that, mixed with that nihilistic, like that's where they get their melody from, is more of that Beach Boys style, mixed with the lyrics and sort of tone of like a Black Flag, not as strong and as dramatic, but it has that like surf rock tone. And then if you take that and you think about like what Pennywise and these skate punk bands were later on, they just added a little more melody, I think, to what like an Agent Orange kind of did. So I think like you've invented BMX punk, I think, on this channel. I think the surf rock, skate rock, kind of just general, that type of rock that directly influenced punk. There's such a big link back to that as the thing that they present. Even like think about even the instrumental on this, Miserlou, that kind of can almost double as like a Beach Boys song if you
So
heard it in
that's
a different
that's
tone.
that's one of the comments that I had made when I was writing stuff down on that. I would almost consider this like a Southern California hardcore record.
Hmm.
Surf punk never even crossed my mind, but I'm not even saying you're wrong. I just didn't think of that.
Yeah,
Um, I mean, shit, dude. The 9 tracks in just 22 minutes. It's a hard record to not want to listen to at least a few times. Um,
for sure.
for that reason, I also equate it with a hardcore record because it's super short, which I personally really, really love because I don't know, man. When I get albums that are, let's say, they start cracking 35, 37, 39, 42 minutes, I'm like, bro, that's so much of my time. I got, and some albums are like that I love. Some of them aren't. I mean, Rancid albums are typically about 45 minutes. The last couple weren't, but they're in their heyday. They were putting out really long albums. Uh, so, I mean, I just appreciate when you get in, do your thing, and get the hell out. I think that's
Mm.
great. Plus, it opens with a classic song. Bloodstains is one you hear. Even if you don't know who Agent Orange is, you probably have heard that song.
Well, that's one of those songs that we talk about. Like if there ever was like a greatest hits of punk, like that song would be on there, of like
Oh, for sure.
just like generic punk movie, and there's punk songs playing in the background. Like that's one of
It's
their
like
contributions.
kind of like Amoeba.
Hmm. Well, and
It
there's a
fits
lot
that
of
same
crossover.
like it
Yeah,
would
like
be on that same compilation with Amoeba.
for sure. Like that and Amoeba and Damage by Black Flag. Like that's on the
Right.
like Starbucks would sell the greatest of punk, and I feel like those
Oh,
songs.
they sure would too, and it'd be in a digipack like a bunch of
Oh yeah,
assholes.
totally would.
Uh,
And actually, I think there's some crossover membership between like the Adolescents and Age. I think like Steve Soto. I don't know if he was on this
oh,
album,
probably. I
but I
don't know
think he was
who,
like
but
in both bands, and a
that
lot of those
wouldn't
guys.
surprise me at all. Excuse me for yawning. That wouldn't surprise me even a little bit, dude. All back then, I would imagine there was such a small community of punk rockers that like are hardcore kids or whatever you want to call them, alternative folks, that it'd be hard for me to be convinced that there wasn't some crossover, at least to a degree, at
Mhm.
least playing some fill-in shows or something. Maybe not recording an album, but oh, I went on this tour with them. It wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, and those guys, they're just learning the songs in the van and kind of doing their thing. And it's funny too, like Agent Orange, with all that said, like they're this real well-respected band, and a band that a lot of modern bands have cited as a big influence. But like there's not a lot that at least I know about them. You know what I mean? Like I don't have like a ton of knowledge on like where
I
they
know
like,
very little about them.
and I don't really know why they didn't release that many albums like throughout their career, but have stayed so active. And it might just be because what they did was kind of sustainable, and they're able to do it on that level. Like they're really like a big band in terms of like licensing their songs too, and I think that's a
Yeah,
big
I mean,
part of how
that
a lot of
matters.
people
That's a
know their
big
stuff.
deal.
Yeah, they're in video games, they're in a lot of movie soundtrack, and they're that's the one thing about this music. It's kind of that punk that's kind of cool like that, and can like this sounds like a soundtrack to a video game or a soundtrack to like a badass like 80s underground movie.
Definitely feels like some Tony Hawk could be played to this.
And I think they were on a few of those games, and even on like the sports games and stuff like that. I think they were not shy about licensing their music out, and that might have answered my question of why they didn't put out more stuff, is because they were able to build a career off of endorsements and those kind of things too. That could very well be the answer.
I mean, yeah, and I think that if you put out, you said they had what, 3 albums, you said?
I think so, around there. Yeah.
So let's say you have 3 records, right? If they're all quality and they're all classic, why would you wanna go and then risk putting out a 4th one that sucks, you
That
know?
everyone hates. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, if you can space them out every, like, because nowadays music is just different, man. Now you have to put out a song every freaking week before people will shut up and leave you alone about, "When is your new song coming out?" Back then, you would put out a record and you would tour on it for a couple of years or more, and then you'd go home and you'd spend some time writing a new record. So they could have existed for a whole decade and only put out 3 records, and it wouldn't be weird, and then they'd just be a legacy act at that point, touring on their old records.
Mhm.
So, like, I don't know that it is super strange that they have only got 3 albums. I didn't know they only had 3. I thought they probably had a handful, but,
Well, and it's not strange for a lot of bands from this time period to have little output, but like to
that's
also be
true.
active is kind
There's
of
a there's a
it.
lot of bands from the '70s and '80s that have 1 or 2 records, and then they just split up or whatever. I mean, shoot, dude, even bands like Blitz, don't they have just 2 records? Like, it's crazy how many
I think so.
really
Yeah,
good freaking Sex Pistols. The Ramones did it the weird way. They put out like 7 albums. Like,
they're the opposite of that. They like instead of like wondering what could have been, they showed you every bit of what they are.
I mean, they even have that terrible fucking rap album that old Dee Dee
Oh,
did.
yeah.
Oh
But even the
man.
band, the Ramones, they've got a cover album. They've got like they did all the rock band kind of things. They have a Christmas song. Like, yeah.
Bro, I can't quit yawning today. I don't know what's going on. I'm not even that tired.
I'm also very unengaging today too, so that's part of
My
it.
brain is just like, call me when you're ready to do something. And I'm like, I'm doing something. And it's like, oh, well, I'm out for a while. Thanks, brain.
Well, I mean, every time I talk to you, you're telling me about the 9 things you have going on at once. So it is possible that you could be tired.
That's a valid point.
I know you feel you're superhuman, but it could be possible that you're mortal.
Oh, I am feeling the lack of superhuman abilities these days, my friend. So, this album's got a classic Orange County punk sound that produced a lot of early Offspring and AFI. It shares a lot of DNA with TSOL, as we had discussed earlier. Yeah, man. The song Everything Turns Gray switches things up quite a bit, though, especially with that thrashy guitar riff. But the vocals are even a little different, in my opinion. It's a very thrash metal inspired song. Specifically, sounds like Megadeth to me. It'll be added to my personal list.
And what's interesting about I never even thought of it in that way. For my comment on that song is where I know that song, and most people who would be familiar with like a hat like this is Lagwagon covered that song on Let's Talk About Feelings in '98. And a lot of people, I think, in like my generation, were familiar with that song first through Lagwagon. But it's funny because, like, when you think about what the Lagwagon formula is, it's the thrash guitars turned into like pop punk and tamed
right.
into that. And it's funny, your analysis of this song was sort of that. And it's
well, I mean, to me, I heard it and immediately it sounded like Megadeth to me. I was like, "Holy crap, this is awesome!" Because I really do enjoy some like our older Megadeth stuff, but
the guitar work in particular, I think on this
it was
album,
very much in the guitar. The guitar riff was very thrashy, dude. I was like,
the palm muting on it and yeah.
So I was like listening to the album and that song came on and I stopped it and rewound it to like start it over so I could like pay closer attention. You know, the and then immediately after that, Miserlou is the very surf inspired song. Is that the one that's instrumental, right?
Yeah.
I just I put down here with the so there's a wild I put down wild the variety of sounds within just 4 songs of this album. Personally, I'm not a fan of instrumental songs, but it's fine.
I think like we both share that. And of all the instrumentals we've talked about, this is one of the more acceptable ones. I just think instrumentals don't really go well on punk records. It doesn't really fit the genre as well. It's not really that
Dude,
kind of
punk's the
indulgent
lyric
genre. Yeah,
important
punk's
genre.
about feelings, not and expressing them in that way. And I think like instrumentals don't usually like MXPX has an instrumental that doesn't fit that kind of band.
No, it
But
doesn't. That shit is dumb.
this band is kind of a band of like players, is sort of how you get the impression of how this band is. So they can do an instrumental, I think, pretty well. And again, because they're instrumental, kind of almost can go into a few different genres too. So that's why I think it works. But at 207, it feels a lot longer than the 207 because that's the thing about instrumentals. They do feel a little lengthy because it's like I think your brain is waiting for the singing that's like never coming.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it is you're waiting for something that's not coming.
Like that's why I can accept like the Metallica instrumentals a lot more because I already know those songs are 13 minutes long. So I view that more as like classical music that I'm listening to than necessarily a thrash song.
100%. Dude, it's funny. I this is totally changing the subject, but I'm like really bothered by how much I'm yawning.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, why am I yawning so much? So I Googled why we yawn, and I'm like, oh, I should go turn my AC down a little bit. Like it's literally to cool your brain. Like
Oh.
like
So
if
your brain's like a
it's a little
computer and that's like
stuffy
the
in
fan.
here. I don't like fans. They dry my nose and eyes out real bad. I like the way they feel, but the effects of them really mess me up.
Is it unseasonably hot over there like it is over here?
It's fairly warm right now, and it's kind of stuffy in my house. I don't know why I'm wearing a hoodie. So, well, I kind of always wear hoodies. I guess that's what it is.
Everything around here is kind of still set for winter, but like outside feels like spring and so inside's just really hot.
Yeah, I went outside earlier. I was wearing a hoodie, and I was like, "What the fuck?" It's like,
But
it
the
was
mornings are still,
definitely.
yeah. It's
But
ridiculous.
anyhow, I didn't mean to just completely jump the train on talking about this band.
Nothing like two old men talking about weather.
I mean, it is what it is. The last goodbye is an excellent track in my opinion. The vocal melody immediately hooks me and grabbed my attention. It's easy to understand the lyrics, which I think is great for an old guy like me that we were just talking about. I need to be able to understand these words. The backing vocals add some volume to the song. It thickens it up. It's just a very well put together song.
This
Even
music
when I'm
is
listening,
very clear, isn't it? For like music
yeah,
that's made in 1981.
yes. I mean, I was even hearing some Misfits type stuff going on in this album, but with a much better recording quality and
Th-
honestly a little bit better at their instruments.
this song kind of has that last goodbye. It's got that like
Yeah.
1950s kind of thing in the chorus.
I enjoyed this album, man, quite a bit. I'm a little surprised. I was a little worried when you picked it. I was like, "Oh man, I'm not sure I'm going to enjoy this." And then I listened to it, I don't know, maybe this past today's Wednesday, so it's probably about this weekend I was listening to it over at the shop. And it surprised me that I didn't, you know, just kind of like play it and then call it a day. Sometimes I do that, man. If it's an album that I'm not that interested in, I'll play it once and be like, okay, well, I've heard it, so I can talk about it a little bit. Um, I listened to this one 2.5 times, not quite three, almost three times. Within the span of a couple of weeks, dude. I got a lot going on, dude. Listening to an album more than once when I'm covering 8 records in a week. That I feel like that tells you that I enjoyed it. Is my point.
This one is nice though too because I listened to a lot in our long research like lead time that we had this time because you could fit it into really tight windows. It's like I'm gonna go do the laundry and then maybe
Yeah.
go do this other thing. I can fit most of this record into that
Oh,
like
bro, it's
basic
like
task.
22 minutes, dude. You can do almost nothing and get this album listened to. I mean, there's a lot of benefits, in my opinion, to having an album that is like compact and gets in, does his job, and leaves. I think that it will more often than not leave the listener wanting more. Whereas if you get like fatigue from an album, that's not good. And so, and I mean, we're gonna talk about that later too.
Mhm.
But I don't know, man. I was pretty surprised by my enjoyment level on this album. I think I'd probably give it like a solid 8.25, somewhere in that, like way above average, dude, like
Yeah.
way up there. Like, yeah, man, I thought it was really good. There was only the instrumental kind of really put a funk in me a little bit because
Yeah.
that's a big chunk of just 9 songs. But I don't know, dude. I may end up buying a copy of this probably on CD over a vinyl because I can afford a CD faster. And I don't know how many times I'm going to actually reach for this to play. A few for sure, but I don't know if it's worth buying a LP for it.
Mhm.
But definitely might grab a CD copy of this. And over the last couple of years, I've been trying to get into more of the classic stuff that I didn't listen to as a youngster. Because when I was young, dude, there's so many bands I didn't listen to, and this is one of them. I didn't listen to Agent Orange, not because I didn't want to, it just wasn't available. Like I don't know that I ever saw this record until I was a full-on adult. Like I was probably closer to 30. I might have saw this on their table at that show. Like I don't know, man. There's no telling, man.
It wasn't this stuff just wasn't as much in print in the 90s though.
That's
Like
what I'm saying. It's like in the
when
90s, they
when
were
we were
putting
kind of
out all
learning
the
about
new.
this stuff, it was a lot more theoretical, or you'd read about it, or like it
Well,
wasn't
you'd
as
have to get the
informative.
used copies, and some people just didn't sell their records back in the 90s, so they were busy putting out all the new Epitaph, Fat, Go Kart, Hopeless. There was a million great labels,
Mhm.
and they were just putting out new records. There was that sonic boom within punk, and it just created the an excess of new bands with new albums, new ideas, new sounds, and then new versions of old ideas where you get bands that sound kind of like this, but they're not this. They're a different band, and there's just time keeps moving, man. And so right now we're talking about an album that I feel like is a fairly modern album, and then we're looking at it going, damn, it's 25 years old, huh? That's insane. Like, the next time we talk, we're going to do 4 25-year-old records that all feel like fairly modern albums to me, but
That's all modern music to me. Those albums we're going to talk about, like that's a modern
and none
sound.
of them are a modern record. It's
No,
insane, honestly. It's kind of
our
crazy.
own dividing line is telling on ourselves a little bit.
Right, right. So yeah, man, I'm gonna go with 8.25. I think this is above an 8, not quite a 9. Uh solid record, man. I enjoyed it, man. And if the band ever gets to see this video, I'd actually like to talk to them. I don't know if they have a desire to do a podcast episode or something, but I'd love to hear like just history of the band. I don't give a shit about a Houston show from 20 years ago. I care about, like, tell me why you guys started playing this music. What made you guys influenced by, or excuse me, what influenced you to play this style of guitar, and
Mhm.
how'd you come up with these lyrics? And I want to hear about that, man. I love talking to musicians. It's not even about like what caliber or I guess popularity level of musician. It's just anybody, man. I'll talk to like local dude down the street, and then hopefully I'll talk to Lars Fredrickson, and then I'll go talk to, Dave, who I work with all the time now, and who's somebody I've been listened to my whole life. And then I'll go talk to somebody from a local band in Houston, and it's all the same shit to me. I just want to know about, from your perspective, what does punk rock mean? And I guarantee you that these guys have interesting answers to those questions. So, and
And
being from
probably
'79, dude, come on, dude.
more firsthand perspective than probably anyone can provide.
There's not a lot of people that can give me firsthand perspective from that era, from that part of the country, that are still kicking around and willing to do
Mhm.
it and active in the music scene. So that's a valid point too. Uh, I know a lot of my homies from LA love this band. A lot of the LA homies love Agent Orange, bro.
I really heard about them first as a band that was just referenced by other bands. Like that's definitely, and they just
For sure.
people would say Agent Orange, Agent, like that for a little while that seemed like a secret code that like the cooler bands knew of. And again, like I didn't really appreciate how kind of widespread and known some of this stuff was, because as we were just talking about, it wasn't as accessible. So it existed in the past. I think punk in particular, that was different, because I think like if you were into like metal or hard rock, you could find old Led Zeppelin records at your, at your Hastings or whatever. So,
Right.
but you wouldn't necessarily find Living in Darkness unless it was part of some special reissue or something like that. There'd be plenty of punk, but it, like you said, it would be the Fat and the Epitaph and the stuff that was happening,
Yeah. And
that
the
was
thing is
selling to
that,
the kids like you and I, like the current stuff.
well, also you got to think, man, back when we're talking the 90s, there wasn't streaming services or anything. So every day you probably had at least a handful of like punk rocker kids going into these stores looking for whatever was bought up, used, and put on the shelf. So if you weren't there on a daily basis, which I didn't have a way to do that, man, I missed out on probably tons of stuff that I could have gotten. And the kids that got those missed out on the stuff that I was able to pick up, dude. There's only so much used material out there in the 90s, man. People back then, you sold your albums when you needed money. You didn't sell them because you wanted to. So people didn't just, consciously decide, all right, I'm gonna go give rid of all my music, because if you got rid of it, you didn't have it.
Well, that's the difference in our whole like culture now, is like we buy stuff designed to wear out and that's disposable. But like there was a certain time when it was about kind of holding on to everything you had and finding the value in it. And there is something crazy. Like I do think about like pieces of old like physical media that I've had since the early 2000s to the late 90s. Like that was $15 30 years ago. So when you crank that up to like inflation. Now, how much has that paid for itself from all the usage I've got out of it and all
Bro.
that? Like more so than $20 a month for a streaming service could ever really yield as the same kind of benefit.
Well, so I think that the streaming service thing is going to have a pretty significant change in the next couple of years. I don't really know exactly when, and I don't really know exactly what, honestly, but I know it's coming. I know it is, man. I can feel it. And so I was just going to mention that I've got this phone. It's a
Mhm.
nice phone. It's a Galaxy S24 Ultra, but I paid for this. It's paid off like for like a year. I've owned this phone for a long time. And so I've made a decision that I'm going to start. I've already started emptying it. I got to find I need to buy another hard drive to put all my videos of my kids and stuff on there.
Mhm.
But I'm going to empty this out, and it's got a terabyte of memory. No, wait, it might be a half terabyte. Either way, it's got at least 500 gigabytes of memory.
It's a lot of memory.
Yeah, it's a ridiculous amount of memory. I'm going to be using this as a iPod video, essentially. I'm going to just put some movies on it and then just go absolutely ape shit putting music on this thing. And I want to get away from streaming services, dude.
Mhm.
I mean, I'd rather look, I understand that Spotify has basically replaced the radio. You can still listen to Spotify without paying any money. It's essentially the radio. But when the radio was all we had, I still didn't listen to it. I listened to CDs and albums and cassette tapes. I'd like to go back to that. I'd still like to go, and if I can't afford to buy this record this week, okay, maybe I shouldn't listen to it. Maybe I should wait until I have $7 and buy a digital copy, throw it on my phone. Like, there's nothing wrong with that, man. And we have too much music. It's hard. Think about this. If I told you, Rob, I need you to go find 5 punk albums that came out in the last 12 months and that you like, I think you'd be hard to come up with 5.
Mhm.
I do this every day so I could come up with 5 because of my job. But dude, if I didn't do this, it would be difficult because I wouldn't know what I was looking for,
And
right?
almost every Friday, I go in and see what has come out and think and, like all kinds of stuff that I swear I'm gonna go back to.
And then we
And
don't
yeah,
because we go back to the ones we love, and then also it's just so convenient. If you had spent $12.99 on that thing that you said you were gonna go back to, I bet you'd have gone back even $5. Dude,
the
most of
the
these bands
vinyl over there is finite, and it's all been listened to, and it not all of it's my favorite stuff, but it's
right,
here, and so I have embraced it.
correct.
So I know a little bit about it, and so by virtue, I like it a little bit more, even if it's not all my favorites. I have stuff in my car, like you talk about the CDs, because I have no other choice. I can only grab those because if I want to listen to something like that. And so I'm just grabbing them as I'm like in traffic and putting it in, and I'm living with that, and I'm experiencing that album as it was intended to be experienced. By the way.
100%. 100%. Well, one thing that and we'll move on to another album here in just a second, but like, uh, I think that if bands can get behind the idea of charging like $5 for an album on Bandcamp digitally,
Mhm.
just digitally, not a physical copy, of course, then I think you could convince an awful lot of people. Hey, man, it's just $5 for the album. You can get what 10 a month, and it's only $50. It's like that's what an LP and a half, and how many times am I going to have to listen to that band's album on Spotify for them to get $5? A gargantuan amount of times, right? It'll never happen. But if I buy it for $5, at least I know I'm going to listen to it more. I'm going to know their songs when they come to my town. I'm going to go see them play. So I may not listen to as many bands, but the bands that I choose are going to have a much more dedicated, loyal fan. And I would rather buy an Agent Orange CD, listen to it a bunch, learn the songs, and if I get an opportunity to see them play, cool. If I don't, whatever. But like, I'd rather do that. And I didn't used to feel this way, dude. Even like a year ago, I was fighting
Mhm.
this, dude. I was like, no, man. I do appreciate this the ability to just go through, and I use it on the channel a lot. So streaming services help me in my career. I get that. But I am
Mhm.
trying to go on my personal level. If I'm not at home, I don't really use it's weird, dude. Like at the shop, I almost exclusively listen to CDs. I hardly ever put on Spotify, and occasionally I'll use YouTube. But anyways, rant over with. I really appreciated that album. I enjoyed it. I'm a little surprised, but I'm glad I listened to it. I'm glad you picked it, and it gives
I
me
am
another.
too. I thought we would have more. Not dis. I just didn't know that you would be so receptive to it, especially because I knew a little
I
bit
mean,
about your
yeah.
history with
If
the
I'm
band.
honest, I was a little surprised when you picked it, and I was like, oh man, I'm not gonna like this record that much. And it had come from something that happened 20 years ago that I can barely remember, and honestly means nothing. So, uh, Who knows, dude? There's a million reasons why people do things, so I don't have a clue, man. They might have been, maybe they were drinking. I don't know. I don't fucking have a clue. I can't remember none of that shit, dude. I remember being there. I remember playing. I remember some kind of disagreement. I remember us taking a large amount of people with us when we left, but there was a shitload of people there still. It wasn't like I'm not trying to insinuate that we just took the whole crowd, but we took a bunch of our homies and left, and it was a significant amount of people. But yeah, good times, dude. Good times. Fucking Agent Orange. That shit's funny. All right. Let's pivot over to Murder City Devils, dude.
All right.
Okay, let's see here. So, this is a band and an album that I've been waiting to talk about for quite a long time, and I intentionally did not write down any notes hardly for either of my picks. And the reason that I did that is because I wanted to see if I'm going to be able to talk about two albums that if you asked me, hey, how do you feel about these? I'd go, they're very important to me. So, okay, can I talk about these records with very little notes? We're about to find out. This album came out in 1998 on Sub Pop Records, which is a label that had a lot of interesting releases in the 90s.
That's a grunge album. I mean, that's
I remember it from being something that Nirvana was brought to us
that's
by, I
Bleach came
believe.
out on Sub Pop, and they're basically, and like the Sub Pop people were very tied in with all the like the Black Flag people and like the whole network of underground music. But that was the Seattle underground label, was Sub Pop. So basically,
Yeah.
if you were going to break as a grunge, like an underground grunge band, that was the label. That was like the lookout of that scene.
Nirvana, Mudhoney, Sunny Day Real Estate. Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Oh shit, Soundgarden, Afghan Wigs. Yeah, this was much more of a grunge label.
I think
But
they would define it as the Seattle sound, even because it's even they even are proto grunge, even with those, like that's really like that Seattle alternative.
valid. Yeah, I mean, dude, wow, they even have a compilation called The Grunge Years.
And I do
That's
think they probably, well, obviously they do. They did have other stuff, but I think that other stuff probably came because this came post grunge, in the height of it. So
They
it's
did a couple of Dwarves records, an L7 record, Reverend Horton Heat, but I mean, a lot of what they did was, grunge. Seattle, like you said, Seattle.
well, like like L7 is a band that like usually gets fit into the grunge category, but also has records that came out on Epitaph and that kind of thing.
Yeah, when I did that Women in Punk video, when L7 was something I was talking about, I was a little surprised when I went to go listen to their music, how much I didn't really jive with it because it's not what I was expecting it to be. It's much more alternative and grunge than it
Yeah,
is
it's really
punk.
that first album. That was more, and really the thing about
Maybe that's what it was. I listened to that one record.
those early grunge bands is they were all big, like, punk rock kind of people, but their version, their way of crafting the sound was adding like the Black Sabbath and stuff like that, and the dreariness into it, and that's sort of where grunge begot. It's kind of funny because people who listen to grunge weren't necessarily into punk after grunge became a thing, but everyone who made grunge was like obsessed with punk. But all of those bands,
That's true.
they all have this trajectory of like their first albums are like the fastest things you've ever heard because they're kind of coming out of thrash and coming out of the 80s. And by the time they
Right.
get to like the mid 90s, it's like a competition of who could like be the slowest and heaviest. With like grunge has this
Slowest,
whole,
moodiest, saddest sound.
yeah, they almost tried to outdo each other.
Who
Like
could
with
sound like the most
catchiness.
heroin?
Yeah, who could sound like heroin the most? That's exactly a good definition of like grunge at its worst.
Sorry. Yes, that's true. So, had you ever heard this record before?
Tangentially, like this is a band that's always just been on my radar. But like, if you had asked me to name a song, I would have like just drawn.
Oh, I've got absolute heaps of bands like that, tons of them, dude. So the first 3 songs on this album, I want a lot now. So come on, Dancing Shoes and 18 Wheels. It is incredibly hard for me to find 3 opening tracks from any band that I think are just outright better than that. I love those songs. And I got okay, so do you remember being young and having CDs and you'd get caught in this trap where you'd listen to 5 or 6 songs and then switch CDs?
Mm-hmm.
How many bands had crummy first halves? Quite a few.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of bands I'd listen to one song and just change it. This is one of those bands that had the first half was so strong that more often than not, I would leave it in and I'd be finishing the whole record because this album is what 12 songs, 37 and a half minutes. So it's a little more dense than, I mean, it's quite a bit more dense than an Agent Orange song, but it's a little more dense than albums I typically listen to now.
Yeah.
But I remember when I first heard this record, there's a guy named Mike, let me hear it. And he introduced me to two bands that day, Murder City Devils and Against Me. And boy, I tell you, that changed my life because both of those bands are incredibly unique and they can't be copied. I've never heard a band that sounds like Against Me, and I've never heard a band that sounds like Murder City Devils. I've heard some that have some similarities to each band. American Steel, as an example, sounds something similar to Against Me. And he introduced me to American Steel. That son of a bitch, Mike got me. He got me good. But
Good.
I just remember that the one that stuck first and the hardest was this band. I could not stop listening to them, dude. This is like emo for cool kids, bro. Like I was like, holy shit, these dudes are rock and roll as fuck. Like I thought greasy hair, leather jackets, sunglasses indoors, cheap beer, like jukeboxes. Like that's what I think of when I listen to this band. And I went through this phase where I wore jean jackets everywhere and like slick my hair back and shit. And I had like a nasal piercing in my nostril and fucking I thought I was fucking badass, dude. But I listened to this band probably more than any band other than maybe Rancid, which is a very odd pairing, I guess. They sound nothing like each other, but
I think they fit very well together. I would
fucking A.
disagree with that. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I think they have a very similar tone to them that I think like I felt a very Rancid vibe to listening to, like that was in my notes.
Okay, I'm gonna have to re-listen to this again, thinking of that to see what I think of that because that is a wild statement. I definitely, when I said interesting, hey, fuck it, whatever. I'm not gonna even argue against it. I don't know. I haven't really thought about it like that, to be honest with you.
I like you could, here's what I would say on that. You could have told me this came out on Hellcat and that would make total sense to me. I guess more so than
Okay, when you word it like that, that actually does track a little bit.
that's the vibe I'm talking about. Maybe not with specific sound, but like if you could have told me like that, like you could tell me right now that this was on Give 'Em the Boot, and I'd be like, okay, that's where I heard it before. I don't know. I don't think it is, but like that's
no, it's definitely not. But that is a valid statement, dude. It does kind of sound like it could be on Give 'Em the Boot stuff, huh? You're okay. So not so much Rancid, but Hellcat.
But like
that
that
actually does make sense to me.
Like a band that I would watch a music video in black and white. I feel like they could.
Yeah, Hellcat did a lot of like dark toned bands. Like, have you heard of the Nerve Agents?
Yeah.
Like this band and the Nerve Agents could have done a split or something.
And that's funny when you think about Hellcat. And I don't want to get too off topic, but like there's not really a unified sound to that label. It's just vibes.
People always call it a ska label for some reason.
Yeah, well, because like I think more currently, like the bands that pop from them, like recent, like Grade 2.
It's just wild to me because I think of Giving the Boot and I don't think of ska at all. I think fucking dirty ass.
I think like the dark, to me, Hellcat's the dark, grimy corner of Epitaph, right? Like that's
right. That's exactly yes.
And that's why these guys would fit in because like you could stuff like these guys. I think you could stuff in there, but I think also the Sub Pop thing kind of also makes sense too because there's something very rock and roll about this band.
Man, it took me a long time to find this stuff on vinyl, dude. I was very excited when I did. It is a very important release to me. Man, I tell you this, dude. There's not much on this album that I don't like. Left Hand, Right Hand is the only song that I don't have currently on like a playlist of some kind. Very rarely do I get to an album's end and it has a song like this one where it's called Every Shitty Thing and it's kind of long. It's like 4 minutes. Dude, this Johnny Thunders, bro, this fucking album is so good, man. What'd you think of it?
So I'll be honest. When we first got our 4 albums and I did like my first listen to, this was the one that I was like, okay, this is the struggle of the week. Because the other 3 kind of flowed for me. Now, thankfully, we took a lot longer in recording this episode because I listened to it a lot more and I started to come around to it. I think for me, the length of it is a little like how this the criticism you normally have of albums. I think that does kind of get me on this album, and not it's like looking at the length of songs. It's not excessively long, but I think this style of music is very like the way I would almost describe it as like blues punk in the way that he's kind of like doing it because it's very like it's very like that Mike Ness confessional kind of way. but yeah, turned up. But like, it's this just sounds like alcohol to me. And I mean that in a positive way. Like
I
everything
mean,
about
bro, they
this
got some songs about alcohol. I can tell you that
sounds
much.
like it should be played in a dive bar with like some bikers that may or may not kill you. And that's part of the fun of like that whole experience. Like, and that's really what this whole thing sort of like it sort of sets up that kind of atmosphere. So at first, compared to the other three albums that we were listening to, which have a lot of like upbeat and kind of and major chords to them and stuff like that, and this is just kind of down in the dumps kind of stuff, and it sounds like a lot of different things. It sounds like there's a lot of I go back to Black Flag's Damaged, the second half of that album, where it's a lot of those longer, like there's a song, I don't know if it's Another Round on You or Every Shitty Thing, where it's like it's straight up the exact almost chords of Damage, but it's brought into the style that they're doing. It has that same sort of just uh it's an album that sounds like someone's having a breakdown, and it's there's something that's very engaging about that once you engage with it. Like the song Dear Hearts, like the
Mm,
way he is just getting
yes.
so into, like, this album makes me want to get intoxicated and get in my feels, and just like I have a completely sober mind listening to this, and it felt like the wrong way to listen to this album.
I've spent a lot of nights drinking to this record. I can assure you of that.
It's a compliment for
It
sure.
sounds like a highway, man. It sounds like lonely, dark nights. It sounds like truck driving. It sounds like dancing.
Mhm.
But it is definitely a dark album. Like the addition of like the keyboard organ situation is so incredibly genius because now you can't do that without being called, oh, you just sound like the Murder City Devils. So like I don't know another band that has this sound. I've never heard it. I've always wanted another band because I could do 5 more bands that sound like this. I absolutely
I think maybe stuff that came before it that it's sort of influenced by, but yeah,
maybe something like that, maybe, but
like
not
like TSOL we were talking about earlier. Like I hear a lot of TSOL, especially like the one album they did with that sort of like haunting kind of theme has, I think, a lot of this stuff on there. I think it's like their second or third album. And then also another band that we talked about a few months ago was The Damned, and I hear a lot of The Damned on this.
yeah,
It's The
the
Damned, but
Damned
without
has some
that sort of
similarities.
British refinement that The Damned kind of. It's like if The Damned were a drunk American. Like
Huh.
that's what this would be like. It also kind of sounds like your buddy's band too, to have a little more. The one with the cool flash tattoo on that album cover.
Wait.
Is it Born to
Oh, no, wait, Born to Lose?
not Born
Really?
to Lose? No, the one that you've put. It's one that you've kind of put out.
Generation Exit?
Maybe one of your buddies. The
Is
vocals
it on
sound
that
like,
label?
yeah, but I can't think. It's the cover of the one album has like the traditional like tattoo symbol on it.
Is it like a tiger?
Yeah.
Okay, Generation Exit.
Okay. That vocalist, I think I can kind of hear that same kind of vibe. Like I don't know if they sound alike,
Okay,
but
so like gargly whiskey filled,
whatever
like
that like that band has a little more, your buddy's band has a little more like pep in their step, I think, than what this does.
they're definitely more high paced.
Yeah, but like I feel like the sentiment of the singer is very similar in the way they're what they're
Oh yeah,
doing.
Chris has got a sad tone to his vocals. It sounds haunting and sad sometimes. I don't even know if he means to do it, but like
Mhm.
I know what you mean because I've heard him sing sometimes and been like, "Damn, dude, don't make me cry!" Like, you sad bastard, what are you doing? Just shout out Chris. I love that guy. He's
I'm
an
doing a great
awesome
job of being your friend too, and being like, the one on your label, and then I can't name anything about it.
Honestly, dude, it doesn't really bother me. It would be weird if you didn't know I had a label. That would be fucking ass. But like, I don't expect anybody to listen to every single thing that I put out
I
because I
do
just
love when stuff you put out, the streaming stuff gets suggested to me on algorithm, which makes me think, oh, that's really cool. Or hey, they're listening to our stuff so much that they know you and I are friends, and are just
right,
pushing that to me.
dude. They had a band called Nowhere Bound in between Born to Lose and Generation Exit, right?
Mhm.
And Nowhere Bound has a lot more in common just because they're more Americana.
Mhm.
But yeah, dude, I mean, there's not a lot of music out there that sounds like this, and I wish there was because I really like that swaggery. I mean, they have a song called Boom Swagger Swagger, bro. Like this band's got swagger. They've got, you know,
I assume
uh,
they're all about that life too. Like I don't think you could fake this.
I've been around them once, and I I'm afraid to drink with these guys.
Oh,
It was a long time ago in Austin at South by Southwest, probably. Yeah, and I wasn't like sitting next to the guy talking to him or anything, but I was
Yeah.
around this band, and I was just like, they were back then. We all did that though.
Mhm.
I mean, I spent a lot of time inebriated behind the wheel of a car listening to this. That's not good, but it is true.
Mhm.
This is definitely sad breakup music. Like
Mhm.
if your girlfriend's leaving you or cheating on you, throw on some Murder City Devils, you'll be all right. May take a while, but y'all can sulk together. These
Yeah.
dudes they're going through some shit. Every song is
Yeah, because
about.
it sounds like a bender. It sounds like, and it's you were saying like that kind of thing. It's whiny in a way, but it doesn't come across the way when punk is whiny. People kind of don't like that. But this is
Right.
sort of confessional in that kind of way, but it's presented
Confessional is
in
a
a cool
great
way.
descriptive word. Yes, it's very confessional. They're looking at themselves in the mirror in this album and going, "What the fuck did I do?" Or "What am I dealing with?" Or "Why me?" Even,
Yeah,
But
it's not really
not
about.
why me. It's more like, "What the fuck did I do?"
It's more
It's
like
more
oh
like,
shit. Yeah.
oh shit." Yeah, like I mean, just go through the lyrics, dude. It's gonna fuck you over. It's gonna fuck you up. Like the stuff they talk about is just so visceral, and like it's not violent. It's just dark. The tone of this album matches the lyrics energy so well because, I mean, can you imagine if the lyrical content wasn't as dark as it was, how much this would be a weird album?
Mhm. That's what I
It
mean.
would
It
be,
would it would be contrived. Like
yeah,
it all kind of has to fit together, or else it would be like because like they are kind of going at it so hard that if any part of it didn't work, it would be silly because
right.
they're going so hard. It's so gravelly. The songs are so drawn out and so kind of loose with the way they're going about it. It really wouldn't work if it did something other than that. It would just be explicitly a joke. I think.
Well, what's funny is that all this talk about this band, and I don't even know where they're from. Like I've listened to this band so many times in my life. I never thought to look at where they're from. Let's see. They are from Seattle. Okay, that
Okay.
makes so
So
much. Okay, I almost said I thought they were going to be from there, but I didn't want. I wanted to double check first.
well, and
So-
and that really does actually track with a lot of things like we were talking about earlier. I think part of what happened in Seattle and it's part of like where I live and anywhere that's kind of like rural but still connected to places is like there's not really scenes. You know what I mean? You just kind of get all the heavy music together. So a lot of bands that come out of those places are these sort of collections of a lot
Mhm.
of different genres of heavy music together because like, like and this was the case like where I grew up, like I was like the punk guy, and then there was like one other metal guy, and then there was the guy that kind of
Oh,
listened to
that
the lighter stuff,
was
and we're all kind
exactly
of
how
like
my
best
high
friends
school was.
because we're like the four guys that listen to. None of us listen to the same stuff, but we sort of are all exchanging that and blending all of that together. And so that doesn't like surprise me at all without knowing anything that like a band from the Pacific Northwest, think again, Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, Nirvana, but bands that combine different musical genres together to kind of create, let's be honest, like nobody ever made happy music coming out of Seattle. Like, is there like a pop punk band from the Pacific Northwest? Because all of these are just different shades of gray that we're talking about here.
Bro, you don't hear bop coming from Seattle.
No. Like, Orange County can produce like gritty punk and it can produce like glitzy punk.
Yeah,
New York can produce, like
it's hard to be
glam
mad when
rock
you
and
live
it
by
can
the
produce
beach.
street punk. Pacific Northwest just produces like rain rock. That's it, no matter what the genre is.
Well, when you look up Murder City Devils, they're
Oh,
called a garage rock band,
okay. Garage punk, I'm also seeing too as a.
which I would agree with that. I feel like
Mm,
they're because I just call them like a rock and roll band. Like they're just a rock and roll band to me, but they're an incredibly important one. What's funny is they wear a lot of hats because the punk rock community claims Murder City, the rockabilly and psychobilly guys do. Like there's a lot of people that like this band, and then I guess some of the more I guess grungy types would probably like this band too.
well, it's
But
like if you have a friend who just like really is into like rock music proper, like
mhm.
I'm pretty like this is probably a good thing to like show them or to like kind of get them to
Right.
something different.
Yeah, because you can hear what he's saying, and it's not a lot of, like, drawn out weird, like, pretentious guitar solos, which I love, don't get me wrong. But, like, this is
Like
a
honestly, if someone's into
straightforward
like
rock record.
if you have an old guy that's into like George Thorogood, and you want to show them something that's punk rock, you could show them like this, and they would be like, okay, I
That's
can kind
super
of get
true, actually. Yeah, if you got an old head unk sitting next to you that's like, "What do you listen to?" and you go, "Punk," and he goes, "What kind?" You can show him this, and he might not punch you in the head. He may not call you derogatory names,
like he'll call
and
you
he might.
homophobic names, yeah, but he won't quite.
Yeah, a
He
couple
won't mean them
homophobic.
negatively, I should say. He's gonna still do it.
Old people are out of their minds. Uh,
Yeah.
I say that as I become one,
Well,
but
that's the whole thing. We have to be like the boomers and not realize that we're the dated people and just think that we're on the cusp of stuff as our like teeth are falling out and we have bald spots.
yes. Yes, this album is a 9.5 for me, dude. It's got almost nothing that I don't absolutely love. I rarely do 10 out of 10. This is a 9.5 record. I do think it could be a song or two shorter and it might even reach that 10 status, but 9.5 out of 10 ain't nothing to be mad about.
No, good choice. I'm glad I got the exposure to it because I kind of
Yeah,
like
I've
this
been
band now, you know.
Dude, it's funny. I've been like thinking to myself whether or not I should ask you to listen to this for quite a while. And I was a little hesitant when I brought it up, but I was like, you know what? If nothing else, I need you to listen to it. And if you don't like it, you don't like it. But if you do, good, because I love this band. Do you have a couple of songs you really liked off of it, or is it just more of a whole
So
album
again,
experience?
Dear Hearts was probably my favorite. What's the one 18 wheel
That is a pretty great song.
at the beginning, and then probably Johnny Thunders. I kind of really distinct, but that close of the album, I think the last two songs together, like that whole sequence is with the is that's where he's doing sort of the palm muted ghost notes through a lot of that, where he's sort of singing through. It's like tuk, 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 tuk. I can't remember which one of the last two songs that kind of keeps going and going. It reminds me of like a cool version of like AC/DC's Right On, but it's like if that song was cool, was kind of
Dude,
how that is doing.
another community that likes this band is the horror punk community.
Mm.
They have a haunting sound.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I think.
Haunting.
Like that damn TSOL. I can definitely see that sort of
But then they have songs like Dancing Shoes. So they have this haunting sound, but you're like, you want to get out and like dance and wear your sunglasses indoors and like, smoke when you're not supposed to and
they're just okay. Like if horror punk
drink whiskey drinks.
existed in the 50s, this would like say for some odd reason, like that's the only thing that evolved in music was horror. I don't know,
Dude,
because of like the movies or something. Universal made horror punk. This is what it would sound like.
hell yeah. Dude, Dancing Shoes is one of my favorite songs, like probably just period. Cradle to the Grave is really great. Dear
Mm.
Hearts is a fantastic track. You're right on with that one. 18 Wheels is one of their big songs. People love that song. It gets requested on the stream a fair amount. Every Shitty Thing is one that I'm gonna have to play tonight on the stream because I forgot how much I enjoyed that song.
That's a good closer too. Jeez.
I think it is as well. Cool, man. Good talk, dude. Let's move on to the next record. All right. So why don't you lead the conversation with this one since this is your other pick?
Yeah. All right. So for our next one, we're gonna go back to April 13th of 1999, which is pretty infamous time if you actually know your American history. What happens 7 days from there? Now that I'm thinking about that, I won't talk about the stream because we'll get demonetized. But just look that up, folks.
Oh, does it start with a C?
Uh huh.
Okay.
And yeah, it's just I don't know how I know that so specifically. But like, oh, that's
It
a week
ruined.
before that.
I just talked about this event on a Scream podcast because Scream 3 was drastically changed because of that event.
Mm.
And like they took it off of a school setting. They wouldn't let any teenagers do anything crazy. They wanted to pull back on the gore and lean into the comedy. And it's like that's not what Scream should be doing. But conversation for another day.
As someone who was only into the exact music that they were putting that thing on at a small religious school, that was a fun time. Let me tell you, that was
Wait, what
great.
now?
So I was as someone who was a fan of the specific artists at the time that were like kind of being in association with that event, like the musical acts that were in association.
Like Marilyn Manson and
yeah.
Shit?
Like I like that again. I was at like a Catholic school at the time in the 6th grade, so I would if I could write Marilyn Manson on any notebook, that was my favorite thing in the world to do.
So were you a Mansonite?
I kind of was for like 6 months, and then I realized that this music really wasn't that good, and it like basically when I actually got into music for more than just the shock, I was like, okay, well, like I appreciate the shock, and I still like a lot of rock music, I think, for like its sort of shock value, but like that's not actually what I like in like music. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
there was a whole evolution of like, for me, like going to like punk was more like interesting to me than like a lot of like the metal stuff, which was just out there to be sort of like on display and doesn't
Well, a
really
lot of
have
the metal
subtext.
stuff, and especially back then, was like you had a bunch of like a resurgence in the parental advisory type style of censorship.
Yeah, exactly. And I was the kids. I was the exact generation of like kids that they were trying to protect. Like I was like kind of in around middle school at the time, so I was the right impressionable like kids that they're worrying about wearing those t-shirts and stuff like that. I was right in kind of the heart of that generation. And honestly, a lot of my adult life has been shaped by that little time period. Like I still like someone told me like you're always going to be your whole adult life is defined by you just thinking like you're like the adults and background in your life were just totally stupid people when you were young, and you're on like a mission in life to prove that, and that is kind of an
Shit,
interpersonal
I
thing.
just did something real stupid, bro.
What's that?
I hit a button trying to do something on my computer to make it easier for me to read something, and I opened up another program, and it's fixing to fuck up our camera.
Oh, okay, yeah, I see how you're. If you just cut that other program off, it'll probably because that is
No,
on mine sometimes.
I just closed the program out, and it's not gonna.
It's still doing it.
Yeah. Hold on. That is fucking annoying. Let's see. What do you recommend I do? Should I just end the recording and start it back up?
Yeah, probably.
Okay. Give me like 1 minute, like literally 30 seconds. I'll just restart it and send you a new link. I'm so sorry, dude. That was 100% fucking stupid on my part. I was looking for a date and I hit the wrong button. As soon as I hit it, I was like, oh, dude.
I've done that on the stream before too. It happens.
All right, give me 1 second, brother.
All right.
Okay, so we're back. Sorry about that, folks. Let's see. Dude, the way my kids speak, I don't understand half what they say. Okay, so yeah, we were talking about. Well, you were going to start introducing this album. Yeah. So yeah, what album are we talking about?
Blue Skies, Broken Hearts, Next 12 Exits.
Man, what's up with that album title?
It's a reference to something. I forget what it is. But it's of a piece with kind of how this band sort of presents themselves and a lot of parts about that, which I think we'll get into here.
It's by the ATARIS, if anybody's wondering.
Yes, I should mention that. See, we're thrown off by our adversity that we're facing here, but we're gonna overcome. Again, the ATARIS, Blue Skies, Broken Hearts, Next 12 Exits, April 13th, 1999. The second studio album by this band. Now, when you and I were talking, I don't remember if we recorded it or we were talking offline about doing this album. I think you kind of threw out because you know I'm a big fan of the ATARIS. Like, hey, let's do some ATARIS, and you assumed I was gonna say So Long Astoria, especially because right now, like that's the album that they are sort of doing all the reunion tours on, and that's what they're sort of putting out there as their classic era album, which makes sense because chances are if you heard a song by this band and you're not like into this music, it's a song from that album. That was their major label album, yada, yada, yada. But I think if you were to ask the real heads of this band, I don't know that they would pick this album as the album, but they would say this album is the album that sort of defined that band. Like this is the album that got them all their notoriety, that even though it's not the one right before they went to the major, it's the one that put them on that radar. It's the one that made them sort of indie superstars or you know, punk level superstars. This album was the album that was the catalyst to getting everything going. So like, I think the fans of this band, whereas right now they're touring on what they call their classic era lineup, which is just the lineup that recorded So Long Astoria, which is a fine lineup. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you were to say like the classic era of the band, I think it's actually this lineup for this album, which is very similar to that one. It's only one or two guys changed out. And it's this time period because, as we'll talk about, the ATARIS are a band that built up a lot of popularity on the underground scene, got to the major labels, had a huge hit that turned out that was a cover on the majors, and they just didn't survive being on the majors, and had kind of like one of the furthest falls from grace that they've just now sort of got their head back above water. They're one of the bands in our, most of the bands in our scene from the 2000s that like made it big. There's actually not a lot of like the major labels kind of chose the right bands when you look at a lot of those bands. When you look at like the AFIs and those kind of bands, like those bands who you know, sought out Rise Against, they sought out to make it big. They did, and it worked out for them. And like, they're not really regretting that decision. The ATARIS are one you could probably have the counter argument that if they never go to the major label, they probably have this 12 album career of these underground hits and have a lot bigger legacy than been this
Interesting.
cautionary. They're sort of thought of in our scene, I think, as the like, it's like Jawbreaker was the first cautionary tale of the first boom, and they're the second one. They're the one, and it's funny because they love Jawbreaker so much and so influenced by them. I don't think they realized that they became kind of like their generation's Jawbreaker in that kind of way. So I say all that to set up to say that I think to ATARIS fans, there was something really special about those first 3 albums and being on that journey. Personally, they were them along with AFI, but them a little more specifically for me. They're the first band I ever saw it change for. They're the first band that I was into, you know, on the punk comps, you know, buying this record, which again, if I'm getting this record where I live, it's still pretty widely distributed. Like you know, if I'm not getting it at a show, like it's still making it to places, but you're not finding it in department stores necessarily. They're not quite at that level. Like your friends at school didn't know this music, but like if you were into it, you knew it. So I set all that up to say that I really just kind of wanted to dive a little bit into this era of the band and specifically this album, because this was the album again that really sort of set everything up. In particular, a couple of songs on this album being on some other comps and stuff got their career kind of going. So I would say they sort of owe it all to this album.
Interesting. So when you gave me your 2 albums, I got it completely wrong. I thought, oh man, I'm gonna enjoy this ATARIS album and I'm gonna not like the Agent Orange album. And boy, it was a struggle to get through the ATARIS album for me. I don't mean to talk shit about it. I'm not trying to be rude or anything. I don't know, man. It was just tough for me to get through. Even the name of the record annoys the living shit out of me, which is stupid. It shouldn't matter. All I really knew about this band was their cover of Boys of Summer. And that came out like what, 3 or 4 years after this album?
So that's like 03. Yeah. So that's 4 years. So there's a whole other like classic album in between that album and this album too.
Well, the only notes I really wrote down were like, holy crap, this starts out and then continues and sounds nothing like this, like what I remember this band sounding like. I don't know what I was expecting, but it's got a lot of like similar tone to like MXPX, but different music, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Like it's a lot about girls and high school stuff. And I think with music like that, if I didn't hear it as a young person, I have no need for it now because I don't need these lyrics now. So MXPX, I like MXPX because I heard them in 9th or 10th grade or whatever it was. And so like they've always been a band I like. So if he had flip-flopped that and I'd never heard MXPX, but I'd heard the ATARIS, I probably would have just liked the ATARIS and not liked MXPX so much. So I don't say it with any kind of like disrespect or anything, but
yeah, we had this.
I really wasn't a fan of this, man. I could hardly get into any of the songs.
We had this exact conversation with, I think, Mest, and I told you like, I fully
probably
can expect anyone who wasn't there at the who wasn't 13, 14, 15 at the time. It is hard to get into it. Like if you're going to get into this band, honestly, So Long a Story would be a much better entry point to this band. If you weren't kind of the, like, let's face it. And the thing about the ATARIS too, is like, not just me, but they were the band that promoters started realizing, oh, if we book them, it's not just all the sweaty dudes that come in. Like it's the sweaty dudes who have girlfriends that like this band that come in with them. So that was a big part of them being a draw. There was not a lot of bands in the scene that they were hanging out with that quite fit that description as much. And they're a weird band because geographically they're very, very weird.
Where are they from?
So technically everything they've recorded has been recorded in California. A lot of it with Joey Cape from Lagwagon, and they're sort of a offshoot of the Vandals as well. But so the band is, a lot of it goes, but singer-songwriter Chris Rowe is kind of the heart of the band and the one consistent thing. He himself is from the Midwest. He's from Indiana.
Okay.
So like the whole So Long Astoria concept is about him kind of returning to Indiana. But part of, and his life story is actually pretty amazing. But part of his whole thing is kind of what I was talking about earlier. He was the one punk kid in his town, like in his ice cream shop, who was writing these songs. Like to the extent that the ATARIS were a band, it was his friend from school that kind of knew how to play guitar, who would play the guitar parts that he would write for him, you know, kind of in their bedroom. But those songs that he got going at first was enough to catch, I think it was Warren Fitzgerald from the Vandals, enough to catch his attention through like a demo tape. And between the ATARIS and one other band was the impetus to start up Kung Fu Records. But there was no real band. It was just kind of Chris and his friend. But he comes out to California. And I believe the Vandals people put Chris in touch, seems like, with the Lagwagon people.
Okay.
And so Joey ends up producing a lot of this stuff. And like their first album, their drummer is the Lagwagon drummer that's passed away, Derek Plord. He's the drummer on like that first album, which I think really just Chris's songs that he had brought. Then in the wake of that, though, so Chris then comes out basically as a teenager from the Midwest to California to sort of start this band out of nothing. Does the whole thing, is homeless. Also, like his origin story, kind of, he was like a teenage parent. Like I think he got his girlfriend pregnant when he was like in the 10th grade. Damn. So the whole time he's kind of trying to rate most of these songs. Like there's a few relationship songs, but most of these songs are about that dynamic of being away from his daughter. And he's talked about it now. It's really heartbreaking. He's never really got to know her in that kind of, they have a good relationship, but he's never got to really be dad. He's been, guy on the road for, and it's crazy. I know her name because she's referenced in like 9 different songs. You know what I mean? Because a lot of his music is about her.
That's a bummer.
Is about, this guy who kind of took on like adult things probably before he was ready, including like moving out to do punk rock. And that's my plan to take care of like my baby mama. That is pretty damn insane. Like, and this, so, say what you want about the guy,
bonkers, dude, for sure.
But they end up, I think again, the Lagwagon guys get him some guys that none of them were experienced, but other guys that were kind of in that same soup, and put together this lineup. And this lineup, I think, is really because they got like real studio time with it. They really got to gel. Mike Davenport, who's the bass player, who's in a lot of other bands too, he contributed a little bit to the arranging. And this is the album. 2 things really got this band going. It was this album, but prior to this, they had an EP on Fat, which I think you've had in your store in the past. It's called Looking Forward to Failure. It's got these fortune cookies on the cover. So that kind of made that, and because like Fat Mike really kind of liked these guys too. And again, you have the Lagwagon connection and all that. So they weren't a fat band, but enough to put out the.
It's like they weren't a fat band, but they weren't not a fat band.
Yeah, they were like kind of fat adjacent. They were fat enough to be on a fat comp, specifically the song San Dimas High School Football Rules.
I mean, that's the one song that I like on this album, but because I like fucking Bill and Ted.
Well, it's one of their signature songs, and that song getting on that fat comp just blew this band up. So for whatever reason, people would buy the fat comp, and they just loved this song. So all of a sudden, their tours just started expanding. People that didn't have their albums because people were hearing them on, and I think they even were sending over like some samplers of that EP, maybe with the fat comp. I think Fat Mike kind of knew there was something, like everyone in this underground scene knew there was something to this band and to these songs. And clearly they were doing this thing, but this album, again, you've got that song that comes out. That song really is almost bigger than this album. Like that song, you could tell someone this album is called San Dimas High School Football Rules, and they might believe you, because that song is kind of so not like. My second interaction with the band was seeing the video to that song. Like that's how much. And I will say about the ATARIS, for me, they were everywhere. This album was the second album that was like a non-major label album that I ever bought. The first one is Rancid 2000, and this one is the second one.
That's crazy.
They were on like every comp.
2000 to this.
Yeah, that's why those are my first. So my exposure to the genre are those 2 albums. Those are the first 2 albums that I'm getting, and I'm like. I don't really get how they sound similar, but I'm like, I like it. I like both of these things.
Yeah, they don't sound very similar to me.
No, they don't. But they're just kind of both hard to find, was sort of the common thread. And they were, I have the Warped Tour comp, those 2. And again, Rancid seemed like the coolest band in the world. And then the ATARIS kind of seemed like a band that was really kind of targeted towards me in that kind of way. So Rancid, so the ATARIS were more of my band. Well, Rancid really was a band for like your generation, even though I was very much into them. And I'll tell you personally, I got this thing and I just played it front to back, front to back, front to back, front to back. Then I got the next album, played it front to back, got the first album, have that one on vinyl now. And then So Long Astoria comes out, they blow up. I'm still a fan of theirs, but obviously you have the side eye, right? Because you were there first and everyone likes this song that's a cover. So like your aunt likes a cover of a Don Henley song, which is cool. They do a badass job of it, but it's like, you don't get it. And then it's crazy.
That's the thing, is that you get people from outside the circle of trust in your circle of trust. And you're like, I don't want you here.
Well, and then to sort of fast forward,
hashtag gatekeeping.
But it wasn't just, it's not just me though, because I also didn't care. Like I was like, okay, it's cool. Everyone else likes that band. I also like all these other bands and I still have the other albums and whatever. But what's funny about that is they were also too punk rock. Like they will admit that they were too punk rock for the mate. Like they just were not ready, even though they had been a band. Like they were so self-sustaining on the indie level. They never considered that they needed to scale up when they got bigger. And so like they said, like all of a sudden they got to the majors and they need people to handle their merch and licensing and all that. And they have like the guy that they shared an apartment with that had been doing it for their fan club for all these years. You know what I mean? It just, and here's the thing. Chris Rowe is like one of those guys that will die on a hill, even if it costs him $1 million. You know what I mean? Like he's just that one of those kind of artists where it's like, you're not going to really compromise his thing, or you're not, like he's not going to be told kind of how to do it. And so at times I think that cost the band, because even though the next album, he didn't want to do pop punk anymore. And it's kind of like an alternative, like interesting album, but a little weird, the album after So Long Astoria. But it's just like, because he wasn't going to compromise those things, because he wasn't going to do those things, they ended up being smaller than they would have been had they have just stayed indie probably, and had, again, then maybe their next album comes out, because they were sort of carrying Kung Fu, and I think they had really outgrown Kung Fu, and there was some disputes about, royalties because of how much they were selling. I think maybe they just go to Epitaph next.
Giant label.
No, and really looking back at it, it was a bunch of tiny bands and the Ataris. Like, so in another way that they're similar to Jawbreaker. So the Ataris at that point are as accessible to like young kids and stuff like that as Rancid, NoFX, that kind of stuff. Like they're found in the same section of the store. All of those bands are on, like, you wouldn't call them majors, but you'd call them like, in college basketball, you call them mid majors, right? Sustainable things, the level that those guys are at. If you were on Epitaph or Fat, you've kind of made it on the indie level. Right. Kung Fu was not necessarily that kind of level. Similar to Jawbreaker back in the day, where Rancid and The Offspring are on Epitaph. Jawbreaker is almost just as popular, but they're on Tupelo Records. So like the distribution, even on those tiers of distribution, it's just not the same, and all those factors kind of came together to see why this band didn't last the test of time. I say didn't last the test of time. They do reunion tours on these albums when they do them, and they're very sought out. People did care about this. I also understand your criticism 100% of you kind of had to be there.
Yeah. I mean, they're objectively good. There's nothing like outright wrong with the music. That just certainly wasn't my critique of it. I just expected it to be something. I don't even know what I expected out of it. I think I expected So Long Astoria, and I was never going to get that out of this album.
Yeah. And like So Long Astoria might be their peak, some might argue, but like, I know like our buddy Florida Punk Archivist, he says, like, because he kind of knew these guys back in the day, he said the major label took their songwriting for, like, they kind of lost like whatever the songwriting charm that they had on these albums. Maybe they couldn't translate it to that stuff. And other people have been critical, and I don't think this is true, or I don't know. Can people run out of songs? Like, do you think like maybe someone only has?
Oh, I think here's the thing is, I don't know if you run out, but you'll run out of inspiration if you get, because dude, most music is not written about happy times. Most music is written about painful times. Most art is created through pain. Most art is created through suffering or through hard times or whatever, right?
Through human experience, heavy experience, yeah.
So if you get comfortable, you're going to have to find another subject, right? Not everybody can do that, is my point. So like Rancid, they'll pivot over to do some political talk. Oh, shit, excuse me, I'm sorry. They'll do some political talk. And then you'll get something like Indestructible, where it's a very personal album. And then they're okay in a couple of years, and then they write songs about the scene or different parts of the world or something going on over in the UK somewhere. And, it depends on how traveled you are. It depends on who you know. I mean, there's a million different things, because I may not be going through something crazy, but maybe one of my friends are. And so I choose to write about that. But if everybody in your circle is doing pretty well, I can't imagine it's going to be too easy to write very passionate music.
Well, and I think Chris has talked about he only writes like first person narratives of like his life, and so like I think he doesn't even like to perform songs that aren't relevant to like stuff he doesn't feel anymore, because he says he doesn't really feel those songs
I've
as
had that
much.
exact same problem when I was in a band a long time ago now, but yeah.
Well, it makes sense on every level. Like I don't care who you are and how uniformed your experience are, you don't have the same sentiments that you had when you were 22, despite the fact
Right.
that your audience has listened to you for 20 years as someone who's 22 and you're, 40, 50, 60. I say that to say that I think because one of their big songs was a cover, there's been sort of this criticism that they kind of didn't have it as songwriters. They had it to get, they were appealing to
Oh,
people.
yeah, I
People
don't
liked
agree
them.
with that.
So and I, but I wonder, like, I think there was, I think, and in looking more at their story, it was also the case where at the major, everyone who hired them had turned over by the time their album actually came out. So
That's
like,
fucked up.
and if you're a punk band that like, has some credibility, but not like, like a band like Bad Religion, even if no one likes you, you're probably still worth keeping around the major for 4 albums.
Yeah, because you're still Bad Religion.
You're going to bring that with you. A band like this that people are kind of associating as a cover band, I think the people who only look at spreadsheets are going to say, well, that's just what they are. And I think the major labels wanted them to probably lean more into like a Green Day, American Idiot kind of sentiment. And they kind of were done with pop punk, to be honest with you. And it wasn't like a thing they were angry about, but they said like in the recording of their major label album, they got to play with different guitars, different sounds. They wanted to kind of expand away from pop punk. And I wonder how much that played into it, because now, how valuable was any of this if you can't just resell it? If it's going to be inaccessible to people, then the majors don't really like it as a commodity.
Well, when you reach a certain age, sorry, I keep fooling my camera.
That's okay.
This half screen thing is fucking my brain up. If you're a certain age, I can understand. Like, there was a time in my life where I didn't care as much about punk or pop punk. Now that has since come and gone, and I've circled back around to being the same guy I was when I was in my 20s and teens and 20s, and I like the same music, and I even like more of it now, and I've gotten to where I've really grown to love oi music because I'm an adult now with adult responsibilities, etc., etc. That all being said, yeah, I mean, I can understand if they grew out of pop punk for an album or two. Not a lot of bands do the NoFX thing and stay the same band the whole way through. Pennywise, the same band. And I'm saying this as a respect thing. Like, that's incredible. A lot of bands do the Bad Religion thing and they end up having a new wave album, or they'll do the Rancid thing and they'll go through an identity crisis and have 2000, and then they'll go out and have a resurgence of a second lap around with Indestructible and Dominoes and et cetera, but sometimes you'll get a father of all motherfuckers. It just is what it is, dude. And I can only imagine being that age and just kind of being over the pop punk thing and being like, yeah, I still listen to punk music, I still like the same shit I like my whole life, but I'm writing something that's a little more serious in tone and a little more personal to me. And the record label's like, yeah, but that's not what we want, man. Get back in there and write us a fucking song for not another Teen Movie 7. And you're like, fuck, man. So,
Well, and it's funny because like bands like this, well, like I can look at it and especially look at like this is just the underground version of what Blink was doing or what those bands were doing. Like that, this is basically, this is the AAA version of that. But I don't think on the ground these bands considered themselves like, we're gonna make a pop punk band. They're just doing kind of their music, and they're thinking of, they're doing underground music, they're doing indie music, they're doing punk rock music. That's what they're doing. And then it gets kind of categorized and commodified. And especially in like these guys who toured with all kinds of different, like they toured with a lot of bands that we kind of more lean to more so than the bands that would end up blowing up bigger that they'd be peers with. And I think when these bands blow up, I think Jimmy Eat World had this. I think even My Chemical Romance had this to an extent. They don't like being so associated with whatever that trend is that they're being associated with, even though they're the ones kind of creating, like,
which
they're the
is
core.
dumb because that trend is what gives them their paycheck.
Yeah,
like,
but they always seem to like all of these guys, the Used, all of them, they get really like skittish about the labels that I think the media puts on them, and kind of maybe they feel pigeonholed by that or something. And so like they almost do this thing where they try to react against that, or they push back on that, which is great about the era we're in now. where all these bands have just realized that they're just going to go to whatever their fans liked them the most as. They're all doing that now. Like they're all they've I don't want to say they've even thrown in the flag, because a lot of these bands produce music that I still like, but a lot of them have kind of come around to like, let's just pick what our fans really like. And let's
have you heard the Newfound Glory record?
I have. I've listened to it actually several times since last Friday.
I'm gonna do a whole review video on it because I was very surprised by it.
I'd give 2 thumbs up to that. Sometimes they make me new music and it all sounds good, but it doesn't really like resonate necessarily. It just kind of sounds like them. I kind of like these songs that they've got on this album.
It's I'm not gonna go into too much detail because it would negate their need for a quick review video, but I was incredibly surprised by how much I liked it.
I've also
I'm not saying it's like some 9 out of 10 or anything, but like I thought I was going to listen to half a song and be like, yep, this shit is trash, and just turn it off.
It's funny too, because like the media hits they've been doing on it too have been like, oh, I guess I'm just in the algorithm. Like like they are going on every like podcast or anything that will ever come across my feed, because every time I open my phone, it's like Jordan from Newfound Glory, Jordan from Newfound Glory.
What label they on with this album?
Oh shoot, they were on Hopeless for a while, but they might have, I don't know, because they were on Epitaph. They're kind of on that retirement.
I think run. It might actually be Epitaph.
They were on Epitaph, and then they were on Hope. They might be back on Epitaph,
or maybe it's Social Distortion that's on Epitaph. Something's coming on Epitaph soon.
There's that whole like phase of and this is what people bring back to the ATARIS. People always wondered like, okay, what like Face to Face or any of these guys. You go to the major, you make it big, maybe you don't make it big, but like because you were so big, you can land on your feet at like an Epitaph or a Fat, and that's a much easier landing spot. Whereas like these guys, they like their album after they left the major was on a label that went out of business a month after their album was released.
Damn.
So like there's footage of this band from 2012, again, less than 10 years after they were, one of the biggest bands on the chart. And they're playing at a venue that looks like freaking Battle of the Bands. And it's just like, how did this kind of happen? And I think there's a lot of factors to it. There's the stubbornness, there's the burnout. It's also the thing, some of these bands, people in the mainstream think that they're flash in the pans, that they just made it because they're young people who have, like happen in music. But no, they were going hard touring for like 6 years. Sometimes you get to the major and you've exhausted everything. Like, you're burnt out. The relationships are fried. The touring is fried. The creativity.
100% agree with that.
And I think this was kind of like a Tom DeLonge situation too, whereas like Chris was really into what he was writing and this and that. And as the singer-songwriter, you're not quite aware of like everyone else can't monetize this in the same way you can. And the rest of the band members, like, we kind of need to tour. Like, we need to like do this thing. And it fell apart from there as all this music went out of fashion. But then, like, I remember Chris, he hated like the scene bands and all of that stuff. He hated all that stuff, and they hated him. They viewed him as like washed up, like kind of like maybe our generation maybe thought of like Ben Weasel and some of those guys at different points. Yeah. I think he kind of took on that. Like there's a video, and like, look, I don't want to be filmed at work at my darkest time, because like, I ain't going to be on any more podcasts with you if they get any footage of that kind of stuff. But like, there's a scene where he just wigs out on their drummer at the time. And like, and it's like 2012. He has a total meltdown on this guy. And it's like, it's pretty embarrassing. And it's like, and everyone was like that is like, this is what happens when fame falls. And it's like, shut up, dude. It's like, yeah,
what happens when you have a bad day? Maybe you have a flu or something. You're not feeling well. Like,
but it's like, and I see interviews with the bass player. He's like, we tried to see if we could beat Green Day. We thought we were good enough, and it didn't work. So, like, it is what it is. There's no shame in that. There's you took your swing.
Bands that hit the heights of the Green Day or an Offspring. I'm sorry, but it's just not a regular thing. Blink-182. Out of all of the pop punk bands that exist, there's exactly 4 that ever gotten close to that big. Sum 41, Blink-182, Green Day, and the Offspring. There are no others that are that big. There's other bands that got popular. There's other bands that got famous, but dude, even
especially to retain their
Yellow
sound.
Card is a huge band. They're not big like the Offspring. Like, they're just not.
Well, and that's where it's like these bands have to sort of decide, I think, as they go into older age, of like, where are they comfortable settling into? Because you get the feeling with like with the ATARIS, Chris never wants to be a legacy band, even though that's like, now it's kind of nice though. So you said at MXPX, and it's funny, him and Mike from MXPX are like legitimately best friends. So like when they're in each other's parts of towns, like they stay at each other's house. Mike's wife's favorite song is San Dimas High School Football Rules. That's why MXPX has a cover of it. So Mike wanted to be able to play his wife's favorite song instead of his friend doing it.
Funny.
So nowadays, though, what I realized, so a few things have happened. I honestly think since like that When We Were Young era that kind of brought up all these reunions that we were experiencing a few years ago. And also the bass player, I think his legal trouble has finally subsided. So he's able to cross state lines now. So they're touring this. Yeah, it matters. They're touring with this classic lineup when they do these shows, but they tend to pair them with MXPX as the headliners and then with special guests, the ATARIS. And it's sort of like this big night of pop punk that like, if that show were to come to a town where I'm at, I'm taking it off work the next day to go to the ATARIS and MXPX for, you know, to experience kind of all that. And so that was a criticism of they always wanted to headline. And it's like, why not just be the opening band on a, you know, on one of these bigger bands and have people like me just be value added. But again, Chris is just kind of stubborn and maybe he's kind of changing that.
Was he trying to headline tours he doesn't have any business headlining?
Well, and it's not, I would say yes and no, because like that version of the band, which is him and those touring musicians, they can probably sell out the very, very tiny venues that they are more logically going to headline.
Why would you rather do that than just be a middle band for like a really big tour?
Versus again, and I don't even know if they'd ever be interested, but even say like a Newfound Glory or one of these bands that has a lot of like either current or past major label exposure to take them out on one of their headline tours. Heck yeah. Again, people from my generation, they would be all about that. And I think maybe Chris is embracing the fact that he's like, you know, in his mid 50s now. People like his band for what it was and for what it is. And I hope he's at peace like that. Cause that drives me crazy when you get like the Dave Mustaines of the world that can't be happy with the fact that people love their music.
Yeah. It's weird, man. There's a lot of, I can't imagine being pissed that people love my music.
I get that feeling with like a Mustaine, you know what I mean? Because he's not in that other band that people like more.
He's so jaded about the Metallica thing that it's hard for him to enjoy anything.
Well, it's like with all this Megadeth farewell stuff, it's like I almost want to say like, and I love Megadeth, but like goodbye, Dave, because like I am so sick of hearing how thirsty you are for this other band that your band specifically doesn't even sound like, because you made sure it didn't, and I appreciate and love you guys both. What the hell's the
dude?
deal?
If you had to take their entire discography, Megadeth has more albums that I like than Metallica does.
Yeah, that's not even a hot take. I don't think like that's kind
of what I'm saying. Like
that's a metal take. Yeah,
dude. Like it's fucking strange that he's so bit out of shape still, but you know, whatever, man.
I mean, I'd probably like say, okay, if you become, I don't know what guy you can become, and I'm still doing this for like 10 people, then maybe.
So if I all of a sudden I'm doing like,
if you're like Joe Rogan or something, all of a sudden
Anthony Fantano numbers.
Yeah. Like slowly the resentment will build, you know what I mean? And then like, I'll write the book and then I'll do the podcast tour and then you'll have to make the video response. We'll go through that.
Hell yeah. If I ever became Anthony Fantano big, just understand that I'd be fucking dragging your ass along with me.
They'd be like, oh no, now the skate punk guy is going to lecture us about Bad Religion for the next 30 minutes.
I'd be like, that is my friend. You leave him alone.
Let me ask you something about this band, coming back to so a few weeks ago, we talked about no one is an All fan over a Descendants fan, right?
Yeah. I can't imagine anybody actually.
There's one guy and he's not over it, but he just found All first, and it's Chris Rowe. He's actually that guy. So, he's again, cause he's at a Midwest record store. He found, and it was the mid 90s. So like, or is the early 90s. So All was the band that was touring. He found All and he loved All. And he just thought that was like the greatest thing. And then All led him to the Descendants. And then the Descendants became, you know, but he holds those two bands in like equal regard. And I've always thought of their music as Jawbreaker meets All, or Jawbreaker meets the Descendants. So it's not as
the ATARIS.
Yeah. It's got, so their songwriting themes are a combination of those. Like, you know, Your Boyfriend Sucks is a title of a Descendants song. If I Told You It Was, right?
Right.
So is Broken Promise Ring and Angry Nerd Rock. Like those are sort of like those sort of that Descendants. But some of these songs, like I want to say it's Your Boyfriend Sucks, also has a 2-minute non-lyric part where there's just droning guitars going on with a sample from a movie. That sounds like Jawbreaker to me. That is that sort of Jawbreaker. And again, Jawbreaker is they're from both the Bay Area. They're from everywhere but the middle of the country, but Jawbreaker kind of sounds like they come from the middle of the country. And to me, this kind of sounds like California punk rock that also comes from the middle of the country, because that's literally what it is. It's from the sensibilities of like a Midwesterner who absorbed like he said, as a kid, he was a fan of Metallica, NWA, Fugazi, again, all like those are his favorite bands growing up. And it's again, that's a typical, I think, early Gen Xer kind of like music diet that you would have. And he kind of put all that together, but came out to California and recorded it with all these Epitaph and Fat people. And I think that's what the Atari sound kind of is.
Yeah, I mean, now that you say it like that, I can hear all that just like that for sure. I found all, and I was young, I didn't realize it was the same band, and I didn't like it at all. Man, I had Mass Nerder, and I had 2 all albums. I can't remember which one the other one was.
I think it's good if like you have to substitute it for like in real time. I think it would have been good to like, I want some more Bill Stevenson music. Let me get some all.
Yeah,
but it doesn't replace it.
See, back then I didn't even know about Bill Stevenson. Like I wasn't a big Descendants fan back then either. So,
well, and I think that was a turnoff for the band, is people wouldn't accept it as its own thing and not just like, oh wait, this isn't the Milo Descendants. Like it's just the not Milo Descendants.
That's exactly what that would probably piss that band off. I would think.
Unless you're Chris Rowe and you found that version first and you're like totally okay with that. Yeah.
All right, man, let's wrap this show up on this one.
Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, like, if you could give it an objective score, what would you give it?
The Atari's album?
Yeah.
Out of 10? Objective?
Like general music reviewer, just kind of like in the frame of, pop.
7.5? Like it's well made. It's above average. But it doesn't break any new ground, and it's a little long. Yeah. Somewhere like right in the middle of like average and then like awesome. Right in the middle of that. I don't think it sucks. I don't think it's terrible. I'm sure there's plenty of songs on there that could make their way into playlists. But it also didn't blow my hair back. But if I was like, say, 17 and I heard it for the first time, I think it might have gotten a higher score.
I would say, because I can't give an objective score on this, because I would just give it a 10. And that's not even like, that's not me.
Fucking insane work to me.
Yeah. And it's because, again, if it's the second like important album that you ever owned, you would probably.
Oh yeah, I forgot you said that. Yeah, that's wild.
As you know what though, to this audience, I would say, if you wanted to give this a shot, but like, hey, we have the technology, you can pick anywhere off. If you don't want to hear the songs about girls, track 7 with Angry Nerd Rock.
Listen to a different record.
Yeah, that's also the thing. Also pick a different genre than pop punk, but
also that.
But say if you want to kind of get a little bit different, like if you're just the guy, you have to get your face busted just slightly, because this album, some of their other songs that are other albums will bust your face. Nothing on this one really will. But start with like Angry Nerd Rock. Skip Last Song I Will Ever Write About a Girl. Go to Choices, Better Way, My Hotel Year, Life Makes No Sense, Answer, and In Spite of the World. Because all of those songs have the general subject matter of, I'm a young adult, I don't know what the hell to do. Which again, if you don't like that subject matter, I can't help you anymore. If you don't like songs about girls or songs about the being unsure about adolescence, please listen to some other genre of music. But if you have any preferences, this can kind of satiate you from there. What a PSA.
I think that the album is fine. I don't have like a super problem with it or anything. I don't know. I think I was expecting something a slight bit different whenever I got into it, and I was a little surprised by that. But I mean, that happens, dude. It is what it is, Yeah,
and everyone's not going to feel everything the same way.
Oh, dude. I mean, there's so much stuff that I love that I just like. We're fixing to talk about a guy that I love so much that. I mean, there's plenty of people that probably don't like what he does.
You're probably the most knowledgeable guy on the internet about this person.
Maybe I would like to talk to this person one day and become the most knowledgeable guy on the internet about this person, but it is what it is. But yeah. Okay. So. Oh my goodness. Okay. What year did this come out in?
So 06.
Is it that late? Yeah, I guess it had to be somewhere around there, because Women Army was still kicking around in like 03.
Yeah, mid 2000s. I remember
Yeah,
Women Army being a
2006.
thing. So
So in 2006, we get the return of Jack Dalrymple with his new band, Dead to Me. Let's see here. With their album Cuban Ballerina. I remember freaking out when this was coming out. Like, I mean, I was like sincerely, I was having like a real moment. Here we go. I'm trying to find out. Yeah, it was Fat Records, wasn't it?
I think so.
Okay. I thought it was, but I wasn't sure, and I was like, man, I can't remember, and I didn't want to like start talking about this album and get the label wrong, but I was pretty sure it was Fat. So this album came out in the mid 2000s. I was living with my friend Cody at the time. He was my guitar player. R.I.P. Cody. He passed away some years now at this point, but it was sad, man. He had some kids, and it was just a sad thing. But anyways, that guy and I, we were both really big fans of Women Army, and I remember we got this album when it came out, and I believe it was in a digipack, maybe. And I remember I opened it up and I played the CD, and I just threw it on the floor and left it there for probably 2 years. I just was like, yeah, this shit was not what I wanted. What I was looking for was a continuation of Woman Army, and I did not get it. This is much faster, much heavier, less garagey, more melodic, and Jack's not the only vocalist. So I was like, I don't give a fuck about this other guy. I say all that to say that over the years, this has become not only a record that I enjoy, but one that I kind of covet. I love this album. I had to get over wanting something I wasn't going to get. And then I come across like the Revolts and Toy Guitar Later. And I don't remember what years all this stuff was, but like there's been other garagey rock and roll stuff from Jack Dalrymple that I've been able to satiate my desire for more of that. I don't know, swaggery rock and roll shit he does. I mean, he's really good at it. It's like a garage rock punk shit that he does that he's very good. There's not anybody I can consider better than him at, but I don't know much about the other members of this band, but this album, man, I'm telling you, dude, like I've been through some emotions with this record, dude. I really didn't like it at all at first. I liked the first song and that was it. And I was like, dude, what in the fuck is this? And then I've seen them play a couple times since all that was happening. Dude, they're so fucking good, man. And I know that the other vocalist had some other shit going on. Let's see. Yeah. Brandon from Women Army founded this band. He was the drummer. Oh shit, that's where Chicken's from. Western Addiction. Okay. I knew he was in another San Francisco punk band, but I couldn't remember what band it was because I don't know much about that band or him. But Jack Dalrymple eventually quits this band after their second release, which was an EP. And he has come back to the band. But for a while, I had completely written this band off. I don't even remember how. Let's see, Cuban Ballerina, how did that come back into my life? It was probably, let's see, my kid was born in 2013. So sometime in that 6-year span. Maybe like 08, 09. It's probably a couple of years, dude. Like I moved back in with that guy, Cody.
Yeah.
Like we ended up like living together for a while. And then like he met a girl and like did his own thing. And then I moved out into just a fucking terrible neighborhood. And like our lives kind of went this way. And then like one day I get a phone call from him and he's like, hey, you want to hang out? We hang out. And then something happens. And then a few months later, he needs a place to stay. I got an extra room and we become roommates again. And we're driving to work one day. I remember very clearly what we were doing. We're driving to work, and it was real cold. We didn't have a heater in the car. It sucked, dude. But we were all bundled up. We had like 2 hoodies and gloves on, and he was like looking through his floorboard for something. I don't remember what it was, but he goes, "Oh shit, I haven't heard this in forever." And he picks up a Cuban Ballerina CD, and I was like, "I kind of want to hear that." And we put it in, and we listened to the whole record. And he sang like the whole album, like he knew the whole record. Like I had dropped it and he kept listening to it. So I was like flabbergasted that he knew this whole album, man. And when I was able to distance myself from the feelings of not getting what I wanted and listen to it from a different perspective, I very quickly realized how wrong I was about that album. I think this album is a classic. I don't think it's better than One Man Army stuff. I'm not going to go that far, but I do put it up there with it. I put it up there in that kind of. Dead to Me is a really important band to me at this point. Now they got some albums that releases that I'm not as familiar with, but yeah, man, this album is fucking amazing. Like, it's so good, dude. The dual vocals I've grown to really love. The guitar writing, the fact that they didn't just do a Dead to Me ripoff, honestly, down the road, being later in life, I'm kind of glad they didn't. I feel like that'd been hollow and fake. If he wanted to do, One Man Army again, he could have just done a One Man Army album.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, how much experience have you had with this record? I mean, I know my story was kind of all over the place, but like,
yeah, I actually, I kind of thought the One Man Army thing ended with One Man Army. You know what I mean? And I only heard about this a few years ago when you told me about it. To be honest with you, so like my experience had just been kind of through you, and I think I told you I always considered myself a fan of One Man Army, but really had only ever owned the split comp they did with Alkaline Trio. But like, they're a band that I feel like if I saw one of their live sets, I would know a lot of those songs just because I kind of knew a lot of their songs, but I just never really had their album. And then when I got this is, so there's another trend you and I have had on these episodes is you keep picking albums that I haven't heard, but you'll know I'll like that are kind of like in the genre of stuff that I really like. And this is great because I like One Man Army, but part of the appeal of One Man Army is not that they sneeze, is their
part of their appeal is part of their appeal is
they put pollen in the mic. They're sort of like almost like a Spirit of 77 kind of band, but in a more American version of it. Like they do the Rancid thing, but they do a little bit of like a tamer, poppier version of that retro kind of thing that Rancid does. So like to me, I'm doing it. One Man Army was always kind of like frozen in the 1970s and just like to me, Jack was like a world, like, you know, like had been frozen in time. It was always like this.
He was the picture cool, man,
with the white t-shirts and his hair and his
like kind of charged kind of hair, but it's still
just
not
like a
quite
like James Dean kind of dude. You know what I mean?
That's exactly the person I was thinking of too.
Sid Vicious, but alive. You know, so like, rest in peace. So that's who. So, but to me, it's like this wasn't like every now and then and I didn't even know about the dual vocals. So you said it. I just thought like, okay, some songs he does the One Man Army sort of style, and some songs he did it. Like I didn't even know that was a thing till you just said it. But for me, what this sounds like is, do you take that singer? And we talked about earlier that we sort of have this dividing line of kind of modern, and even though it might be 30 years old, but this sort of like, or updated sound. It's like, if you took One Man Army and you completely updated that sound, what would it sound like? And to me, this is it, because like, this is in some ways, I don't know if it's as classic as One Man Army in that way, but like in other ways, it's kind of funner though. It's like more of like a One Man Army that could be played at the Warped Tour, a little more accessible in that kind of way. So it kind of merges that sound that it's going to with a lot of that same kind of heart that One Man Army has in their music, and Jack was able to bring that. It also sounds like a lot of different strains of punk in this. I wonder how much like Jack wanted to kind of like experiment and express himself, because like I can hear Misfits in the first song, and then there's some other bands that are going some of these other songs, and it's a lot of things that are from like a lot of different places, I feel like, on this album.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a different appeal for this band than there was One Man Army. I think that a completely different generation and audience would be attracted to this that may not care as much about One Man Army.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's people that, have you ever heard the Revolts or Toy Guitar?
Mm-hmm.
Those are two other projects fronted by Jack that have like, I think 2 Revolts and 2 or 3 Toy Guitar releases. They're more than just, it's a handful of records if you got all of it. It's a fair amount of music.
He has a lot of output, like alone, just himself.
Yeah. Well, I know when he left this band, when he left Dead to Me, he did it to go focus on, I think, raising a kid, I believe.
Look at that. He's got his own Wikipedia page. That's if you're in one of these punk bands and you have your own page, it doesn't just link back to the band page, you're someone.
Right. Is that what Jack's got?
Yeah, he's got his own page. Yeah, look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it says to raise his kid.
You know, and he's also in Swingin' Utters. I mean, he's been in Swingin' Utters for a while. He's got a lot of writing credits with that band.
He's like the most underrated, like Bay Area, San Francisco guy, right?
I kind of say that because I'm a stan of his, so I don't really know if that's accurate or not, but I feel like he deserves way more credit than he gets.
Well, it's because like if you like, well, at least with like One Man Army, like, but I don't know anyone who doesn't like punk rock that would know One Man Army.
Wait, that doesn't like punk rock, but
Yeah,
like
almost all these bands we talk about, like you could have some friends that know him or have heard of. Like he's got a lot of
That's
stuff.
a
They've
good
got a lot
point.
going on, but they really never penetrated, I think, outside of that bubble. And I don't even think of him outside of that. Like I actually didn't know he made all this kind of different music. Like I would have assumed he would have been more one dimensional just by hearing, One Man Army.
Isn't that wild? Yeah, dude. If you go listen to Revolts and Toy Guitar, you're gonna be like, oh wow, you're gonna hear the music he likes, because he likes a lot of stuff. He's got an eclectic taste in music, and I don't know him, so I don't know that that's the case, but I'm pretty confident based on his songwriting that he's got a lot of stuff that he likes. That's, it spans the different genres of punk and rock and roll in general.
We talk about it often, though, like it's kind of a better move for some of these guys to just, like, if they want to express themselves differently, just start a different project. Like
100%.
easier said than done, because sometimes that other name will get you in the door, but it's like it really helps satiate or how it makes your fans happy, because like if you're not a fan of like the modern sounding bass and stuff that's being used in this, you don't have to listen to it, but you're a fan of his music, you just listen to One Man Army, and it doesn't really, you don't got to sit through 4 of these songs probably when you're watching one of those shows.
Well, I mean, no disrespect to AFI, but like, I mean, good grief, dude, they don't sound like what I think of when I think AFI at all. And they don't even sound like what I used to say that about. Like, they've changed so much now that like they've gone through 3 or 4 different sound iterations where
I'm going to go see them in a few weeks, and I have full awareness that I'm going to like 2 songs that they play. Like, I'm so excited to go, because I've never seen them, and they're playing a pretty small club that's sold out. So I'm pretty like into this whole night.
That's cool.
But like, I'm a fan of all of AFI's music, so I'm there for the vibe. Like I have a sick day at work the next day. Like I'm there for this show. But like I'm gonna know the words to 2 songs. Like if they play Days of Phoenix, I'll know that, and then I'll know like some of the songs from the album we talked about a couple weeks ago. I won't know most of it, but I'm gonna have the time of my life. But it is kind of hard when these guys change up so much.
Yeah,
and they have these different fan bases. It's hard when you see them live. Like it's hard to experience them in that kind of.
Well, yeah, I mean, can you imagine going to a One Man Army show expecting that band and then getting Dead to Me songs? It would be,
you're going to want to do sing-alongs and drinking songs and that kind of thing, and then all these guys are going to be moshing and stuff. Like it's just going to be a different vibe.
Yep, that's cool that you're seeing AFI. Who are they playing with? Anybody?
Oh, I didn't pay attention. I don't know.
That's how you know a band's pretty famous.
I want to say I didn't know them. Like they're like someone that's probably hip and cool. You know what I mean? But like, what's funny is like, they're sold out at this new job I work at. There's a lot of like closeted alternative people, which is weird because it's a very like conservative place on the outside, but a lot of the people who work there are like kind of cool. And like me and another coworker have AFI tickets, and we are like the guardians of like the AFI show that all these people are coming to. Maybe the fact that it's sold out is making people just like, oh, you guys are going to that. It's like,
that's pretty cool.
Don't like AFI, but then I forget some of these bands are bigger than the scale I have for them. I have AFI. That was on TRL every day for 2 years. So a whole generation of people got that music.
That's crazy. So
I had One Man Army on TRL. That would have been even better.
Man, that band, dude. I think that band should have gotten much bigger than they were, and they weren't like a small band. I mean, they kind of were. I don't know.
But if I heard about them in 2001, where I live, that means they got penetration. That without me having to. They were one of the first bands I found when I found punk, and I think
crazy.
That's.
And then on. Go ahead.
Well, for me, it's like actually exactly like the ATARIS. They were on that Warped Tour comp, which was one of the first things I ever owned. They were also on the Punk Broadcasting System VHS that I owned, which had Another Night. The video to Another Night was on that, and that's where I first saw One Man Army.
Okay,
was from that. That's what I was saying. Like I was a big fan of that band, and I want to say I even had like some kind of merch from them, but I never got one of their albums. They were just always there. So I think they were pretty big. They just didn't have any mainstream success, I guess you might say.
Yeah. Dead to Me had got closer. Dude, Dead to Me has weird artwork too.
Well, maybe too in a different time. Dead to Me, like if Dead to Me maybe happens like 5 years before that, in that scene, they might have been, because Dead to Me would have been like a perfect Warped Tour band in that time period.
Yeah, I mean, I saw them play at a club show at Punk Rock Bowling last year. When I tell you that crowd was there for Dead to Me, I thought they were a Swingin' Utters crowd, bro. They knew every word to every song from Dead to Me. It blew my fucking mind.
So this is probably one of those bands that like we were talking about earlier. Like maybe they're not that well known, but the people who love them love them. like so they can
that's absolutely true for sure.
like a
Even I
cult
know that
following, you would
without
say,
even
I
having to
guess.
think about it.
Yeah.
Because I mean, like, here's the thing. This is the kind of album that, like, had I not been so ready to hear a different sound, I don't know that I wouldn't have put this on like a top 10 list, dude. Like, this could have easily been one of those albums for me. And now, at this point in my life, it is an album that I consider kind of perfect. I don't know if I'm going to give it an actual 10, but like 9.5, dude. I mean, there's not much on it that I don't like. I have a very strange relationship with it, but the first two songs, Don't Lie and By the Throat, bro, you really can't get a better example of this band than those two songs. So if you like those two songs, you like the band.
Do you get a
That makes
Astro
any sense.
Zombies / Hybrid Moments feel from that opener?
No.
I can't figure out what Misfits song. If one of those two Misfits songs, I think it kind of starts out with that vibe. Maybe Hybrid
No,
Moments.
it might be in their guitar tone a little bit,
I
but
think
like
there's a Hybrid
otherwise,
Moments
not
kind of
really.
feel to it. The way that song.
But I mean, like, here's the thing, though. I've talked to Nitty and about records. I've talked to you about records, and then I've talked to my other buddies about movies. I have come to the conclusion that I do not ingest artwork the same way that most people do. I just don't. I don't listen to songs the same way, and I don't watch movies the same way. So you may very well be hearing something that I just can't hear because I'm not listening to it the same way. I've had to just let that be what it is. Like, it used to really bother me that I couldn't hear things that people were hearing, and I couldn't grasp things in movies that people were seeing.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit, man. It's whatever, dude.
Yeah,
At this point, it's what I love, so I watch it and listen to it. Yeah, this album is fucking awesome. I'm gonna go 9.5.
Man, you know what? Special Professional too. I gotta put a highlight on that one.
That's another one. That's another one that I have highlighted that I like a lot. Cause of My Anger is a very good song too. Goodbye Regret is also very good.
It's another album that gets a little darker as it goes to the back part.
Yeah, it's got yeah, man. Fuck, dude. I just want to listen to it again. What is it? 11 songs. What's about a half hour? Shit, maybe not even that long.
You know, we talked about this is the most eclectic episode we've ever done. Like, I got a playlist that's just the stuff that it's called Punk Rock Review Research, and so I've had these 4 albums, and when this is the last one that's loaded in, so whenever Visiting Day plays, you know, Spotify goes to the suggestions of kind of what you just listened to.
Yeah,
it is so random, the stuff that's been coming after that song. It's most been Murder City Devils, but some One Man Army's been coming up, so all kinds of stuff.
Man,
it's hard to categorize. I think a lot of what we talked about today, honestly.
Yeah, I think Dead to Me has got a fairly unique sound. So does One Man Army. I think, like, honestly, the Revolts and Toy Guitar have the most what's the word I'm looking for here? The least amount of unique sounds within their
more generic,
music.
I guess, in sound.
Yeah, I guess that's probably the right word. I don't mean it with any disrespect, but
yeah, more standard, more typical.
Yeah, but those Dead to Me and One Man Army are very unique bands.
I mean, on the Dead to Me Bandcamp site, it has a debut release from the SF Punks with funny hair and fancy bikes, socially conscious punk rock that blends Jawbreaker and Stiff Little Fingers.
That's not that bad of a.
I'm not hearing the Jawbreaker in them, but like they're
I definitely hear Jawbreaker in them. Early Jawbreaker for sure.
Yeah, maybe. But maybe it's also the San Francisco thing too. They're just sort of like that's also from a very similar.
That's scene. Another thing is that One Man Army. If you listen to San Francisco punk, bro, there's about 5 or 6 other bands I can recall pretty quickly that they don't sound like One Man Army. They sound like San Francisco, and One Man Army sounds like San Francisco, but with its own unique twist.
Remember, I think my theory was that, like, say if the roles were reversed and it was Green Day that got the major label, or Rancid that got the major label like push instead of when Green Day did, I think they would have turned into like One Man Army. I think Rancid turns into like that's what Rancid sounds like if it was really like popified a little bit and a little bit cleaned up. I think it would kind of sound like One Man Army. Whereas this
out and make
I think
add a little more pop sensibility to it.
I think there's One Man Army sort of like embedded in Rancid. Like I think you could find One Man Army.
I can hear some of that
when you look at Rancid. Whereas like this stuff, I think, not to say that One Man Army isn't innovative, but it's more of an homage to a certain specific thing. This feels more of like a hodgepodge of a few different things. I also want to you talk about the socially conscious lyrics. I love all the 2000 lyrics here because if it's socially conscious at that time frame, like that's when I was kind of in my prime of worrying about the world, but not actually having to worry about my own life in that kind of way. You
Right.
know what I mean? So like
Huh.
a lot of these songs about, you know, that they have to do with like the Iraq war and some of the stuff that was going on at that time. It's cool to sort of like kind of not to be in that headspace again, but just to sort of have that time capsule of like, yeah, if you're going to write about like, you know, what's going on at the time, that's what was happening, you know, at the time.
Man, the 2000s were a weird time. That's a weird decade, man.
I hate being defined by that decade. Like, I don't know, man. If you were like a 90s or 80s person, I just feel like you're so much, or it's 60s, all of them. You're so much cooler if that's the decade that defined you than the crappy new millennium with all our lost hope and stuff like that and our
I'm
towers
definitely a
falling and
90s kid.
recessions.
I was born in 82, so like all my formative years were the 90s.
I have a coworker that's she's in her 50s and she's a pretty big music head, and she thinks a lot of 90s music is kind of lame because okay, she was like born in the 70s and then would have been like thought everything in the 80s is cool and thinks the 90s is like she thinks grunge is really lame because it was
Dude,
like
there's a lot of lame 90s music. I fucking hate most 90s music, if I'm honest. They
There-
just mixed a bunch of shit together and gave you sounds that don't go together. Fucking new metal, dude. Are you kidding me?
there is, unless again you were an adolescent in that time period like me, and I used to always think everything from the 80s is the lamest thing ever. Like it blows my mind now that 80s retro is kind of back because like I was conditioned to think like even though I kind of like hair metal, I was like, okay, that's like the most uncool thing ever. And I think all the early 90s stuff is conditioned in my brain, like that's the coolest stuff ever. And then I had to live through the 2000s where rock died. Like rock
It
died
did.
on my watch. So I'll never forgive myself for that crap.
That's funny, bro. Well, let's wrap this episode up. What
Mhm.
do you think of Cuban Ballerina, sir? What kind of grade would you give it?
It's in the 8s. It's right around there. For sure. I think now knowing that there's two vocalists, I would actually like it better sort of listening to it like that because I do
Yeah,
think
dude.
the tonal shifts in the song don't really like
They
in
make more sense
isolation
when you realize
aren't
it's two
bad,
people.
but yeah, it does sort of break it up a little bit as an album, and that makes a ton more sense to me.
So would you go back and listen to it again?
Yeah, and I want to listen to their other stuff too, just to get because I'm a fan of One Man Army and this kind of stuff, and
I
this,
think you should check
this
out
style of music.
his other albums too, man. Check out Toy Guitar and Revolt. So those two bands are a little more similar, but they're much more garage rock. If you're in a mood for something that's a little more like swanky and garagey, like throw those on.
I really do, and I said it jokingly earlier, but I do credit you because I don't think like I loved One Man Army when I was a kid. I don't think I had thought about them in like 10 years until you brought them up. You kind of put them back in my brain.
Doing my job, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Doing my
Keeping
job.
Punk rock elite over here.
Here at the Punk Rock Review, sir. Man, I'm tired as shit. I gotta go take a quick 5-minute break and then start my stream.
And be on as the sole host. Yeah.
Yep. All right, man. Well, next, I don't know if I say next week, but like in the next episode, next time I see you, we're going to be talking about Blink-182, Alkaline Trio, The Bouncing Souls, and Dropkick Murphys, all celebrating a 25th anniversary. That should make it very easy for you guys to figure out what albums we're talking about.
Also celebrating our midlife crisis when we realized those albums are 25 years old.
I was trying to ignore that, but yes, you are correct. I am old as shit. As a matter of fact, we'll probably be talking sometime around my birthday because 2 weeks from today is my birthday. No. 2 weeks from yesterday, March the 10th. So like, yeah, like in about a weekend, a little bit under 2 weeks.
I'm happy for you. Turning 25 is a big milestone, so I'm happy for you.
Nice, isn't it?
Mhm.
Bro, I'm old as fuck, dude. 44 in his hoe.
Hey, I'm on my last good year. This is my last year of my 30s, so like, you know.
You're turning 40 this year?
But yeah, next year. So this is it for me. I'm on my farewell tour.
Wait, your birthday's in February, right?
Yeah, so I'm just starting the trek to 40. Yeah,
that's
so, like
right.
this is the last time I can never claim to not be an old man, like actually, and not just in jest.
Yeah, welcome to the club, fucking Gray Bush.
Yeah, I've already been there.
Dude, maybe I could fly out and hang out with you on your 40th, man.
Yeah, that's a good.
Honestly, I could probably make that happen.
Yeah, I need as many people as possible to attend that wake.
Hell yeah, dude. All right, everybody. Thank you for hanging out with us. Sorry for the snafu with the camera earlier. I'm going to go drink a Celsius and then get ready for this almost certainly disaster. Oh, I'm going to see Scream 7 tomorrow, so I'm pretty excited about that.
Oh, nice.
I love those fucking movies, man. But hell yeah. Oh, dude, send me some links to some good wrestling to watch that's not WWE. I want to watch dudes do like luchador shit.
Okay.
Hell yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you guys very much. Love y'all. Take it easy. Keep it sleazy. See you next time. Peace.